It's Friday.
You always say that with such glee. You always say like, "Hey, it's Friday." Like this is a good thing.
Well, it is sort of.
It is for you because you get up at 2:30 every morning to go to some little cockamamie radio studio above a fruit shop in Islington, and I don't. I think that's it. I think that's the main difference. To be honest with you, I think that's it.
Well,
Who's there? Who's there? Emma Jane Taylor. Hello, Emma Jane Taylor made it. Stand by for sound effect. Eve Phantom.
Hang on. You said stand by. Hang on.
Oh, here we go.
Ready?
Eve Phantom. Crazy name, crazy gal. What else we got? Right. Ed Grossman. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to you, Mr. Ed Grossman. Chrissy Holt. Hi, boys. It's raining. Yippee. What do you mean it's raining? Yippee. Oh, because you're in Spain. How's the movie life going, Russ? Oh, inundated with offers. Inundated with offers. There we go. So who knows? Hell of a show this week. Oh my God. Hell of a show.
You know what?
It's almost like we're a grown-up radio station. What?
Yeah, hang on. We've got to be careful. I don't know if I like this idea of encouraging you too much to sort of going down the movie career, because otherwise, you might become too famous for us and you won't bother with us anymore.
Won't bother with my own. Yeah, you're right. That would be that. That's the sort of financial decision which people know me. That's exactly what I would do, because that's how stupid I really am. Linda Dave, do you know her?
Never heard of her.
You ever met her? Seems nice. Seems to like you.
I don't know why. I've never done anything to encourage that.
No, I've met you for that. Anyway, heck of a show. Loads of really excellent guests. It's a sort of packed thing. You know what? I'm not even going to go onto the Donald and Melania having COVID.
Wait.
I can't even. What's the matter?
It's a smorgasbord of a radio show.
It's a buffet of broadcasting. Come on, that's good. Do you want me to do it again?
Yeah, go for it. I thought it worked well the first time.
Well, it can work even better the second time. It's a buffet of broadcasting.
Oh.
Nothing. You just left me hanging. You absolute bastard. Hi, guys, from a sunny Fife. Hang on a minute. That can't be right. Sue Sleet up in Fife. It's not easy to say. And it's sunny. It's absolutely horrendous. Ebony, the mini schnauzer, has no intention of moving. None. She is a little bit pissed off with me. I'll be honest with you, Phil. She's a little bit annoyed.
Yes. It's funny how people can annoy you, isn't it? Not you, don't worry.
No, here's the thing. I changed the cushions at the back of the sofa. I'm saying it so she doesn't hear. I changed the cushions, right? And they're not the big squishy ones. They're the ones that actually fit. I had the wrong ones on for some years because I'm very stupid. So I had to go to my lockup and get the real one. Right. So, and they're much narrower. But she is determined that she will still use them because she hadn't. And she went, these were a huge puzzle to her because they were much narrower for her to lie on. That's her thing. She's got 1,000 beds. No, she has to lie on this one spot on the back, on the top of the sofa. Why? Who knows? She was glaring at me when the change came.
Have you noticed now that there's a dent in your sofa where she lies?
Completely. There's always, yeah, and these were brand spanking new. Now these look unbelievable. These were so clean and lovely, and now they look again. It's nothing. Well, it's just her home. Hey, Chrissy Holt from the middle of Spain, where it's raining, and she's pleased. And remember, she lives on a farm in the middle of the Chum. My prediction came true. Do you want to put this up? This is not good. My prediction, I'll say that again. Take two, love, still rolling. My prediction came true. We had visitors to the village. The village, be seeing you, from Madrid, Barcelona, etc. We now have 4 cases of COVID, when we only had 1 from March to now.
Oh, whoops.
There you go.
Yeah, but look, not being funny, Chrissy, no one can stay in isolation forever. So what's the alternative? Seriously. What is the alternative to that? I mean, okay, fair enough. Maybe those visitors didn't have to come at this precise moment. But honestly,
maybe they did. Maybe they did. Maybe they had family who they needed to see.
But I don't know what the alternative is. This is my whole point. This is why I don't understand sort of why we're all sort of saying isolation is the way forward, because no one can stay isolated forever. Well, I mean, I don't try,
Well, they
but
can.
I don't want to.
I think you find Charles Manson probably can. This whole thing. You know what? I'll be honest, I'm so confused with this and the anxiety. There's no two ways about it. The anxiety that this is causing, the increase in mental health problems is exponential. I'm not even going to go. Phil's first thing back in March when we were arguing like two old fishwives, nothing changed, when he was saying, you've got to save
March.
what was it in March? But you got to, yeah, precisely, and all the years before that. You got to save the economy. And is it economy before people, or is it people before all of these things? Thank God I don't have to make these decisions. I wouldn't know. Good morning, Flash. Barry J. Allen. Oh, what's this? Chrissy Holt saying, take a chance, families here. Do you want to explain this, Phil? I'm lost. Take a chance, families here.
I think No, but I think what she's saying is that it's either Chrissy is saying that her family are prepared to take a chance, or she's saying that the people that are visiting who maybe had it, they're the ones who are a bit happy-go-lucky and possibly, take the chance here and there. I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm prepared to be corrected, as I dare say that I normally am.
Hey, I love this from Kimmy Lashmar.
Oh.
Hiya. Apologies. I'm going to leave you. This is have to go like that. Apologies. I'm going to have to leave you early to brace the rain to go to a new ladies' Latin dance class. Hello, everybody. Starting at 2 p.m. I'll catch up later. I'll need to know your telly predictions for the weekend with the fabulous Chantal Ricards.
Oh,
I love TV. Yeah, I love that ladies' Latin dance class. Pete, you know what? Some people we sit there going, oh, Jesus, really? And I think it's fantastic, because I think if you don't throw yourself into new activities, if you keep your brain active, your body active, you're going to go round the freaking bend with this crap. I have to do, it's ridiculous. I'm doing my personal training twice a week, which I'm really getting addicted to.
How is your personal training going?
It's going, in all seriousness, I'm doing it with Gail Nichols Fitness on Zoom, and I've just joined her boot camp as well. And I'm going to give it a go. Look, I have realistic expectations. I do not expect to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sly Stallone. I have realistic expectations, but I can see the results, and that's fine for me. I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it so I can sort of show off about it. I'm doing it really for my I'm doing it for my physical health, and I do feel physically much stronger, but I'm doing it for my mental health. I think it's really, really helped. We've had Gail Nichols on the show. We're going to have her back again.
Because there are a number of people who say that when they do personal fitness type stuff, that actually it really helps them up there, so to speak. So how do you feel different? I'm intrigued by this, because I honestly have never felt that. I feel like when I go walking, but not exercise. So what does it do to you?
Well, I love walking, because walking I get into a Zen-like zone. I listen to one of my endless audiobooks, and just me and the dog, and I get into a complete my own space, which is just fantastic, and I just drift away. It's sort of meditative, and I enjoy the walk. So I always walk about 3 miles a day anyway, possibly more, with the dog, whether she wants it or not. With the exercising, you have good days. I'll be honest with you, you have good days and bad days, and some days the weights feel like you can't budge them, and other days it's like nothing. It's like lifting a coffee cup. That's very odd. Some of it is a real mental attitude. If you think you can't do it, you won't do it. And if you think you can do it, you've got a much better chance of doing it. How do I feel afterwards? I'm soaked, I'm exhausted, and everything, but I feel an enormous sense of satisfaction.
I thought you were going to say an enormous sense of joint ache, but okay, yeah, fair enough.
No. I feel an enormous sense of personal satisfaction, and I'm just doing it for me. I'm not doing it so I can, walk around and go all this crap. I'm doing it because I want to feel better, and it anchors me throughout. These shows anchor me during the week. Doing personal training twice a week anchors me, and now I'm sort of doing a little bit of training on my own in between the lessons, because twice a week obviously isn't enough. What is interesting is when you can see results, when you see results, it's incredibly satisfying, because you feel, I think the thing is, Phil, you feel in this insanity that we're living in, one of the just ridiculous, if you can have some semblance of control, it makes you feel a bit better. Does that make any sense?
Sort of,
You're
but
not getting it? You're not getting it?
No, because I'm not. What are you in control of other than
My body? I'm in control of my body. At least I can control that. I can control the way I can try and control the way I look and the way that I feel, because I have no control over anything else. I can't sort out the pandemic. I can't sort out the economy. I can't sort out the NHS. We can only do what we do on men's radio and women's radio. That's it. That's what we can do.
You have to look at a local level. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, right, you get pleasure from making your bread on a Friday. I'm not being facetious. That you get a kick out of it.
I've run very far behind with that today. I'm not. I've sort of played the sous chef, so I'm hoping, as opposed to sous chef, I've played the sous chef today. As I'm very much hoping that I can entrust the task of egg washing the bread with my mother.
You have to give a more. I think you need to do a more endearing face. If you do a more endearing face to you, that's the face. Who could resist that? Little Ponim. Chrissy Holt. Yes, you're right, Phil. Spanish have families here, so they just want to visit. Yeah, don't push it. Me, I'll just say, out of the village, you are number 2. And go out now and then with my friend. Chrissy, give me a little visual picture of your village. I don't mean post a picture of your village, because I don't think Phil can put it up. But what does it look like? Is it tiny? Is it quaint? Is it adorable? What's the deal here? Paul Claridge, I haven't seen it. Sorry, I've been really busy doing other stuff this morning. I haven't seen whatever ghastly Photoshop nightmare you have posted somewhere. So I haven't seen it. Following your thing with Phil as a dog, that wasn't. Oh, God.
You're going to give me nightmares again. I'm not interested.
No. The thing about you and the dog was just horrendous. I think in these
very clever, but it was horrendous.
No, don't let him go up a ladder in the rain.
Dear. Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is, forget that it's personal fitness. It really doesn't matter what the hell it is. I love the idea of Kimmy Lashmar doing ladies Latin dancing. You got to do something. You can't just sit at home and vegetate. It's horrendous. It's horrendous for your mind. It's I think it leads to anxiety, and I really think it leads to anxiety, and I think it leads to depression if you just do nothing. I do. I'm not a keep fit person. I'm the last person I ever thought I'd be doing this. But hey, these are crazy times. You got to do something different. That's what I say. And nothing for you, Phil. I mean, what do you do? What do you do to keep yourself kind of sane? And in your case, that's a fairly broad.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've achieved it so far. I would say, honestly, work. I know that's what I do. I work to escape it, because if I'm working, I'm concentrating on something else. Yep. And if I'm concentrating on something else, then it means that I'm not obviously thinking about anything else. So, which sort of sounds a bit obvious, really. But no, I mean, how can I put it without sounding ridiculous?
Don't spoil us.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what's missing. My pop shield. Hang on.
Oh, your pop sock.
Regale the world with your fabulousness.
Yeah, it's fine. You go and find your pop sock, and I'll carry on. There you go. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Honestly, he's supposed to be the professional out of the two. Isn't that shocking? Seriously, I'm the one who's the producer normally, and he's the one who's on air. And half the time I'm having to tell him. Unbelievable. Anyway, I think the pop sock's coming back. Are you ready for this? Can we watch this in action? Look at that. Oh, how much better does that look? Wonderful. Hang on. What did you do with your sock? Why was it removed in the first place?
I keep this in a case.
Does Ebony?
No, Ebony does not go near the radio case, as I call it. It's just a case. Right? Let's not get excited. And it sometimes just comes off when I take it out the case. I wonder why it sounded slightly different. You see, this was it. Right. The competition that we really like.
I was getting really excited there. I thought there was going to be some whole McGilla as to why it is taken off, whether or not it's some sort of ritual.
What do you think? I do a ritual. Oh, mighty Mike Shield. Oh, I pray to the God of broadcasting. No. Chrissy Holt's come back with a question. Answer. Our village is small and friendly. 2,000 people. Sounds like Beckham. They will help you when they can. Doesn't sound like Beckham. We live in Campo.
What?
So does Timmy, quite honestly. He lives in Campo. I said it. Country, but only 10 minutes from the village. Salar. Salar to you. 48 kilometers from Granada and 78 kilometers from Malaga.
Oh, cellar. Sorry, I thought you meant something underneath the house.
That's a cellar.
Oh.
Which is also someone who gets rid of a house.
A very important question.
What?
Ooh. What's in Phil's cupboard?
Well, this is the new competition that I wanted to start, which fell on pretty deaf ears in your case. I wanted to have a competition. What's in Phil's cupboard today?
And might I suggest as well, Kimmy Lashmar, that we are your radio friends. There is no need to call Russ and I names. Anyway. He's got a mouthful of tea. You wait. He's going to turn to the Trevi Fountain in a minute. Actually, oh God, I did that. Oh, jeez. I can't tell you. I did.
God, that was close. That was horribly close.
Yeah, do you remember when we were able to go to restaurants? Okay.
No, I don't even know what a restaurant is anymore.
Life was normal. By the way, excuse the printer in the background. I'm really sorry about that, but there's a long story. Anyway, would you remember the time when we went?
It does not look attractive. I've got to be honest. You've ruined the whole vista.
I know it's really old and knackered, but anyway, you put up
with about your dad.
The point is that when we Phil's marbles, you'll be lucky I haven't seen them for about
years. In the cupboard. What's in Phil's cupboard today?
Anyway, I was going to say
the gopher.
Anyway, when we went to this restaurant, sort of way back when, with a friend of mine, I don't know what on earth it was. Oh, I know where we were. It was a sushi restaurant. We were sitting, you know, in a sushi restaurant, how you can sit up at the counter where they make the sushi.
I like that. Yeah, and it goes around like a Hornby train set. Marvelous.
Sort of. Well, they didn't have that aspect of it because it was only a small sushi bar, so they didn't actually have the conveyor belt. But even so, I just remember being acutely embarrassed and never being able to show my face in this restaurant again. It wasn't even my fault. It's because for some ridiculous reason...
Wait for it. Wait for it. It wasn't... When he starts a sentence with, it wasn't really my fault.
You have a very suspicious mind, Russell.
Lay it on us.
What happened is that as we were sitting at this bar, really innocently, just about to tuck into sashimi, I don't know what it was. But anyway, all I know is a friend of mine who was with me went to go take a sip of sake. And at that split second, she decides to sneeze. And she sneezed with a mouthful of sake. Well, needless to say that it wasn't a mouthful of sake for very much longer.
No, that's right.
I do have to say, though, that sake-infused sashimi is not that bad.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, but I do have to...
Sake goes with everything. I love sake.
You have to stress. I mean, I'm all for Zen and all of that, but it really wasn't necessary to recreate a water feature. It was just...
Zen Monroe?
Devastating. No, it was shocking. Seriously. And of course, all he was doing was laughing out of nose. Meanwhile, I wanted the ground to swallow me up because it's gone all over the counter. It's disgusting. I mean, she did hold her hand over her mouth, but it made no difference. I don't mean to be rude, but, you know... Hang
on a minute. You're supposed to drink sake out of an elegant little tiny sort of egg cup shaped thing. Was she having a pint of sake? Just took a whacking great gobful and just... Like,
No. We have this thing whenever we drink sake, we do as a shot.
Oh, I can't resist. I normally eat sushi on my own, and I'm wondering if I'm wandering through town when town used to exist, and I find a little sushi. I go, oh, that looks good, and I just pop in. And yeah, I got to down it in one. I can't sip it. I can't sip it. I like it much too much, and it doesn't taste like it's doing anything. And then suddenly you think, I'm smashed.
Now, I think it's for our first guest who's sitting in the digital green room.
How is the catering in the digital green room these days? Have you upped it like I asked you?
It's still a bit digital, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, shame. Nothing to bite on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dear, I'm forgetting my job here. Hang on. Sorry, Mario. We'll be in just a second. Hang on. There you go. You ready for this? Nothing to bite on.
Nothing to bite on.
There we go.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened. You pressed the button. Nothing happened.
It did. You were talking. Listen. There you go. You see?
Okay, thank you.
Over it. Not my fault. Anyway, right.
Doing the best I can with the material that I've got.
A few weeks back, we had the great privilege of speaking to our first guest, who told us, frankly, his remarkable tale about how he has dealt with and lived with clinical depression for pretty much a decade, if not over a decade. I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was over a decade. Yeah.
Over a decade, which I think that although we speak to many people on this show about that very subject, there are very few who sort of stand out based on their attitude towards it. And I actually think that it's more than attitude. I believe it's sort of their ability to inspire others. And that's why we were really, really happy when Maya Razi agreed to join us again. Reza, I got your name wrong, didn't I? I'm so sorry. You're going to kill me.
It was going so well until you actually did the one thing that was vital and actually pronounced his name.
Maya Razi. Anyway, I think he's going to... Yes, I got a thumbs up. Okay, sorry. How about... we'll just use take 2. Anyway, he's joining us now.
Yay!
Men's Radio. For heaven's sakes, add some class to this show. How are you, sir?
A very good morning, gentlemen, on this somewhat beloved, gloomy, cloudy day thus far, although they are forecasting much brighter weather come the afternoon.
Oh, well, that helps us now.
Maya, are you opening up a dry cleaners behind you? What's going on?
Literally, yes. Again, as you can see, it's fast accumulating. You can see here my very much mini.
I've got a duvet set. Can I bring it round? Because
only 80 miles down the road from where you are, but nonetheless, feel free to complain if you need.
If it saves me having to iron it, I'm up.
This is an insurance policy, though. This is an insurance policy. If my ultimate endeavors of conquering the universe fail, then I know there's an alternative. There's always plan B and C.
I like that.
Can I highlight, you're opening a dry cleaners, I appear to be opening a printer repair shop. So like, between us, we are sort of absolutely sort of upping this game of philanthropy. Anyway.
Absolutely.
I'm so pleased you could join. We're Phil and I are absolutely delighted you've come back to join us. Thank you so much. And I also want to say quite publicly, the messages that you write on Facebook, they're mini works of art. And I'm not blowing smoke up your posterior. They really are. They're like, who wrote this? Samuel Pepys or somebody. It's fantastic. There's the flow of the language. I absolutely love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the big question from Phil and myself really is, first of all, how are you feeling?
How am I feeling? I would, again, love to provide you with a straightforward, clear answer, but nonetheless, as you would appreciate, given the attributes of clinical depression, it fluctuates. Like a yo-yo, it's persistently up and down. Yep. For example, yesterday, having woken up, and I mentioned to you prior, there are so many days I wake up, as it were, generally, that I just... there's a great deal of reluctance to want to pursue the day, but I do so nonetheless, as it were. Even the most simplest of, be it daily routines, very much render themselves as being somewhat arduous in scope. But nonetheless, again, and I reiterate this, I just carry on and persevere. I suppose my sense of resilience, if you want to call it, somewhat suffices, or be it elevates me to pursue that day. But how do I feel today? Not to give you a headache. Today, it's, I suppose, the day is barely dawned for me. Admittedly, I woke up a little later than anticipated or scheduled. But nonetheless, as the day progresses, I should somewhat feel the symptoms alleviate themselves somewhat.
It's curious, though, the way that you just sort of carry on regardless, because actually I think that's sort of part of the biggest problem, is that when people descend into this spiral of depression or mood swing or whatever it may be that they happen to be grappling with, carrying on is actually one of the hardest things to do. So I love the way that you sort of almost nonchalantly say that you just carry on regardless, because actually I think that's what's so impressive.
Absolutely.
Well, again, thank you. As I said, but then how I perceive it is that, yes, although like many, one can easily very much succumb to this to the extent that you then merely confine yourself to one corner. And look, gentlemen, allow me to give you further clarity on context here. There are so many days in that process when I do wake up, believe me, there is that ongoing, especially when I have these ongoing relapses manifest themselves. There is such a degree of, be it all the positive attributes you have in terms of self-esteem, self-worth, are either barely very much our bare minimum or are essentially non-existent. They are diminished within that framework. And I look at myself in the mirror and I despise what I see. I literally want to confine myself to and shed tears all day. However, knowing then ultimately that subconsciously, this is merely from a more sober, rational perspective, I am being maybe illogical here, but nonetheless, when you are, as I said, when you succumb to these, in my case, as it were, these frequent relapses surfacing, you are then naturally, be it somewhat subdued by these negative thoughts and perceptions. And this very much then permeates the day itself, or be it the days that then forthcome, as it were. It's something to which, as much as I want to emancipate myself from, and knowing that on the long term, from a more be it general long-term perspective, I will eventually overcome this. However, in the immediate sense, the status quo is such that you are just overwhelmed with a pure sense of being negativity, and if anything, one that then disparages your sense of character and your self-worth. Although here's the other irony. Anyone who knows me, who I don't, and again, I'm very open regarding my condition, as it were, a very open policy. For those that aren't aware, when I then merely flag up a mention of me suffering from clinical depression, their initial response is, someone like you, as it were, you're the last person would even conceive of suffering from depression. Why so well? Looks can be very deceptive. Again, what's on the exterior doesn't necessarily then reflect,
let me jump in here. First of all, it's absolutely fascinating, because this is such a common theme that we hear. You know, I look in the mirror, I hate what I see. This week, Mr. Brainbox, you posted your results of your law exams, did you not?
It was an essay, yes, a mini essay, but nonetheless.
Don't belittle it. You posted your results. They were off the scale, some of the highest ever recorded at the place where you study. That's an extraordinary achievement, is it not?
Well, again, my gratitude there.
Are you allowed to say that to yourself? Can you give yourself that even tiny moment of patting yourself on the back and say, "Do you know what, Maya? That was pretty good."
So yes, again, I would certainly, Ross, thank you for the kind words there, my gratitude. And for me, certainly that is an encouraging precedent in itself. As we discussed prior, that there's been several years of delay because of my ongoing, again, depression. This beloved condition of mine has witnessed there being a delay to the third and final year of my LLB, my law degree endeavors, being successfully completed. However, now knowing that what I'm capable of, as it were, and when I do apply myself, despite that kind of looming adversary in the background, so to speak, then yes, it certainly does then very much set, be it a platform for me then, as we know now, and my school, as I mentioned prior, I am blessed to have such a, for one thing, outstanding school and reputation, but also one that is profoundly compassionate and empathetic towards my ensuing circumstances, to the extent that they're being very accommodating of me, more than I could ever envisage doing so. And now, again, for this impending academic year, which is on the verge of commencing next week, they've granted me another year to be able to finish this once and for all. So now, as I mentioned to you, Ross, in my response to you, that for me now, if I can sustain the momentum, as it were, and consistency throughout this year, and then hopefully finish with a high first-class honours going forward, then that will be very much quite a compelling foundation to go on for then other areas to then subsequently blossom.
Why is it, do you think, and this is again a very common theme, that when people are going through what you go through continually, you can never it's not be satisfied with yourself, but never allow yourself a little break and say, you know, that's okay, that's a little chink of light, that's a tiny little dot of light at the end of this dark tunnel. If I can keep going, that gives me a little bit of encouragement. It's as though we just bat it away. You know, somebody will say, look what you've done, and you go, yeah, well, so what? It's part of the condition.
As you said, as I mentioned, Ross, connecting what you say earlier, that in these circumstances, when you are overwhelmingly, be it consumed or subdued by this condition, in my case being those manifold relapses that manifest themselves frequently in more recent times, you are then you're such a, be it a negative, be it somewhat disparaging mindset, that even though that, again, by you being able to hypothetically have a more sober, rational outlook of that given matter, you then often yield a somewhat of contrarian conclusion. In this case, despite even a third party convincing you or persuading otherwise, it will not anyway sink in. You're of that kind of predefined mindset, as it were, of then perceiving even the most positive of developments in somewhat of a negative, albeit somewhat of a reduced light, you cannot then necessarily allow, or be it permit yourself then to be able to somewhat be immersed in that kind of, be it positive, successful, be it trait or attribute which you display. It becomes impossible.
Is it a case of being scared or intimidated by optimism, do you think?
Well, Phil, certainly there maybe could be a degree, a bit element of anxiety at the prospect of very much then embracing optimism and be it the more positive attributes. Certainly, I wouldn't by any means negate that as being a possibility. Certainly. But nonetheless, ultimately, and I reiterate this, when you are in that mindset, or be it that kind of framework of where you are succumbing to this kind of situation where those positive attributes or be it feelings usually have, again, self-esteem, self-worth, as it were, just the all-round, be it general, be it self-feeling, as it were, all those, be it very positive characteristics or be it traits that are attributed to, again, the positive outlook, are either dramatically reduced to bare minimum or are essentially diminished, as it were. In absence of those, be it factors, you are then naturally prone to, be it maintaining this very negative, disparaging mindset. Only then, and I say only then, when you're able then to begin to perceive the alternative, as it were, as this credible, be it entity, as I said, the positive as opposed to negative, only then can you begin to fully appreciate or then be able to then accept, as it were, the validity or be it the merits of the alternative school of thought, which is the very positive, be it the more light among the darkness, if it were. Only then can that light then upon you, then knowing you're in a very deep, dark tunnel, as I have been. Yeah. You're on this ongoing journey. But then what sustains you in that dark tunnel is fundamentally that very much ultimately what awaits you being sought is this glimmer of light. And upon then you finally seeking that light, it will then gradually encapsulate that darkness. But nonetheless, it could be an extensive journey.
Yeah. Have you? Let me ask you that. Oh, sorry. Let me ask you this question.
When you've seen the lights, or have you do not think you've, as it were, seen the light yet?
I know the look. I know the light is there. The light's existence is imminent. However, for me to have actually been able to embrace that light fully is very much one that has yet to be realized. It's one that's impending in that journey. And that journey has, as you would appreciate, comprised of countless obstacles to which have essentially knocked me back. But then ultimately, as I always say, in simple terms, it's never about how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up or allow yourself to elevate back up and resume that course.
Yeah, how many times you get back up?
Like the phoenix from the ashes, you're persistently resurrecting yourself and then carrying on.
Kimmy Lashmar says a virtual hug to you, which is lovely. Paul Nathan, who was a great guest on the show. Paul, hi. Maya, blessings to you, my friend. I know this feeling. It's a hard journey. Should you want to talk about it, please reach out. That's
much obliged. Thank you for
Paul Nathan. Let me ask you. Let me just ask you a question. And it may seem trivial, but it's not. It's not meant to be. Many people say, over the hundreds of interviews that Phil and I have done, I can't, or they've described it in books, I can't get out of bed in the morning. I wake up, I physically can't. Not because they're lazy. Let's be very clear about this. They just can't. They're that depressed. What process do you go through to say, I have got to get out of bed? How do you convince yourself to do it? It seems like a silly little question, but you know, this is how millions of people suffering with this start their day.
First and foremost, Ross, on the contrary, by no means true, if anything, is one that's immensely relevant and very much one that is, as you said, very common among those that do suffer from depression or be it other mental health issues. This profound reluctance of wanting to even open your eyes, as it were, and to be actually even visually see or perceive this world that you inhabit. As regarding myself, more subjectively, as I mentioned at the onset, regarding that great reluctance of wanting to embark upon the day, I wake up, as it were, at any given time, usually early to late morning, admittedly, given their very bad sleeping patterns. It's quite be it an ongoing saga. For me, I wake up, as it were, so that particular day or given day, or even today for that matter. So upon opening my eyes, this is literally at that very moment prior to then the actual status quo really then surfacing. there's me initially thinking, the dawn of a new day, as it were, another opportunity. What then can I potentially embrace a bit? What can I pursue today?
Yeah.
But then as soon as then those, be it the depression itself, those the usual attributes then suddenly flood in, as it will, be it penetrate that mindset, then that sense of optimism then completely diminishes, or very much then mutates to become something very negative. And then that's where the reluctance then manifests itself. I then well, hold a second, another day, here we go, another day to embrace. What do I do? Nothing very much inspiring or encouraging for me to actually, another, be it daunting, be it somewhat standard day for me to look forward to, comprising of these symptoms, as it were. But nonetheless, what then somewhat conversely compels me then to nonetheless pursue it is that knowing, well, look, the alternative is far worse. For me to be merely confined to the four walls or bed, as it were. As you know now, ever since losing the weight, I am an avid brisk walker. And the brisk walking is essentially what, or partially, alleviates those lingering anxieties, as it were. And
there you go. You see, I'm sorry to jump in. That's so interesting, because Phil was saying, why are you doing exercising and everything? It's what you're saying. I don't know. Absolutely. I think it releases on a simple level. It releases endorphins. On a much even simpler level, you get out, see the view, get some fresh air, go into the zone. It's nice.
Yesterday, for example, as one of many examples,
on a much more trivial level, I suppose it's a little bit like the notion of going on holiday, isn't it? It's a change of scenery, and sometimes a change. It sounds terrible, I hate the cliche, but a change is as good as a rest, if you see it. And but it is true.
No, on the contrary, again, you see, this is where absolutely the fact that with me brisk walking, I'm not confined to one area. Knowing that within Southampton, the city I reside in, my local area, there are actually an abundance of areas, and I'm an avid steep hill walker, as you know, from our prior conversation. For example, yesterday, there's an area within relative proximity of where my mother lives called Bassett. It's literally prior to the M3, as it were, the motorway, to which there are quite a few side roads which comprise of numerous steep hills. And again, for me, that is a mecca. And I invested 3 hours of my time just walking around there, doing numerous laps on the steep hills there. And afterwards, believe me, and you're right, Ross, quite validly speaking, that the endorphins very much were dispersed. They really then had that kind of, be it alleviating factor of those, be it lingering, feelings. And I then proceeded from there to go to the city centre and got myself a coffee in the process. And yes, reflecting back, as with many days, it did somewhat temporarily emancipate me from that feeling. Will be those kind of that. In that, I find myself.
I'm thinking that this must sound very familiar to you, Russ.
What's that? Getting a coffee?
Yeah,
going out and get a coffee. That's my thing.
There we go.
Anyone who knows me knows my thing is I go out with the dog and I get a coffee at various places. That's what I like to do, and
bless you, lovely dog.
That's where you'll find me. Here's some lovely comments, because I'm not patting you on the back, but I want you to understand that you have an impact. It's very. Let me wind back a little bit here. It's very easy to get into the mindset of I'm all alone, and what I'm saying is it's just I'm in an echo chamber. But you're not. You are resonating so well with our listeners who are watching you at the same time. Chrissy Richards. He gives, that's you, of course, a very good insight to this illness. It's hard for people to understand because it's invisible. There is no broken ankle. Sandra Butler, who's an amazingly nice woman and very brave. One day she might come onto the show. She's a very brave person. I'll leave it at that. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I was diagnosed with bipolar, but it was actually from my background, which she's told me a little bit about, and it's horrendous. It mirrored It mirrored many of the same symptoms. It's different for everyone. I still have many more good days these days, but I managed to get rid of the main problem in my life, which Russ knows quite a lot about, which she's been very kind and privately told me, and it was like, oh my God. So not wonder you've been affected by all of this. Now, question for you, and this is from Ed Grossman. And I don't know the answer. I don't know if you do. And if you don't, you don't. Hi there. Is it possible for you to explain the differences, if any, between clinical depression and manic depression? Do you know? I don't.
Right. So first and foremost, Regarding, again, my gratitude for the very kind words there being tendered by your audience, as it were. But with regards to, let me say one thing first and foremost. As regarding those that suffer depression, it's both a monolith and a mosaic in stature. Why? Because it's a monolith insofar as there are certain common symptoms that bind us. There are universal. These commonalities that very much are coherent in all of us. We can easily then share, or be it empathize one another. However, conversely, it's a monolith insofar that there are manifold reasons, as it were, underpinning why people suffer from depression or have even developed depression. And it varies individually on merit one to the next person. So hence why then it becomes more subjective in manner.
So that's what you're saying is a mosaic.
It's a mosaic and a monolith, as it were, concurrently.
Okay.
As I said, the commonalities bind us, as it were, universally.
Did you think of that? Did you think of that? Did you think of those phrases?
Yes, I did, yes.
That's bloody genius. It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Again,
it's brilliant. I've never heard it described like that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Seriously.
Thank you. Stunning. So with regards to the, as I said, the question there regarding the distinction between clinical and manic, again, there is much, be it crossover, there is very much be it parallels there they enjoy, as it were, or bear. However, with manic severe depression, it is then the additional, be it symptoms that are attributed, or be it are testament to that, as it were, which often then entails people, given that the depression is often very severe, that it renders itself anything unbearable to the extent then people are persistently contemplating or pondering on thoughts of extreme activity or behavior as means of then being able to.
Do you mean by that suicide, or do you mean violence?
Absolutely. Suicide, self-harm, as I said, anything that will entail them then sabotaging or harming themselves as means of then, be it somewhat liberating themselves from that impasse. That's then where the extreme, or be it the severe radical depression, is one then that very much renders itself a reality. And I've had various forms of therapy, and there's a plurality of different therapies available, as it were, among them being CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one that is endorsed by the NHS. Why? Because where it is evidence-based and one that has been funded by the NHS, it's one that often your GP would automatically, or be it readily, prescribe to you, as it were.
Well, how have you found those therapies, seriously? Because I know it's different for everyone, and it's really important to stress that you're not necessarily advising anyone in a medical capacity, but what have you found you work?
Disclaimer.
Yeah, no, well, I have to, just because I don't want anyone to sort of turn around and say, oh, I listened to your guest the other day and he said do this and it didn't work for me.
Absolutely. No.
This is more what works for you, and I'm just intrigued to know what did work for you.
So with regards to, I had initiated two different avenues that I pursued. There was the 5 years of the psychodynamically permeated counseling on a weekly basis, once a week, an hour long, which was fundamentally one that delved into your history, your family background, as means like an archaeologist in that manner. They're excavating as much data as possible. In this case, they are literally delving into your history, as it were, as means of then ascertaining potential, be it underlying root factors from a, be it historical family perspective, that may then very much render you being in that situation you're in now, that kind of state of being. For me, as it were, and this is where you can go on an hourly basis within the four walls, and again, they're there to offer you that compassion and empathy to reflect, not only to lecture you or belittle you, it's purely them to give you a listening ear for them then to reflect upon what you said subsequently. In that regard, we were successful in, be it ascertaining certain, be it root factors historically. However, at that given time of my own, be it reluctance, I didn't then delve further deep into it, as I should, like an archaeologist, to be able to extract it further or excavate. And that's where it ended. However, I then subsequently, and so I maintained it.
Why did it end? Why did it end? Why did you choose to end it?
Because the actual, be it the counselor, it was somewhat of a concurrent, be it decision where, and mainly of my own, be it volition, the fact that I was at that time reluctant to want to necessarily delve, despite being able to successfully pinpoint, or be it, as it were, discern those root factors prospectively. Nonetheless, despite that, I didn't necessarily permit myself, or be it grudge myself, from being able to then delve further into that deeper, to be able to maybe, rather than to have necessarily grieved over those things, I merely omitted them.
Were you scared? I don't mean, because it's a general question. Were you scared to have a look and sort of, it's like lifting up a rock, isn't it? Because you don't know what the hell's going to be underneath it, and it can be quite a shock.
I think I would very much certainly concur with that. I wouldn't by any means dispute that. Yes, there was an element again of anxiety, albeit reluctance and fear, if you want to call it as a better word, as it were, to want to embrace that for means of then, be it grieving and fully overcoming it at that stage. I didn't necessarily deem myself, again, maybe subconsciously, of maybe wanting to evade that kind of, be it grieving process, as opposed to actually fully embarking upon it to once and for all overcome it. And that was where then it reached its very much its climax at that conjecture. It couldn't proceed any, albeit progress any further. I then subsequently again pursued the CBT avenue. And again, with CBT, in contrast to the counseling, it tenders you coping mechanisms with the here and now. It doesn't necessarily address the actual root cause of the illness. It merely gives you mechanisms to cope with the symptoms of the here and now, as it were, with your daily routine. And again, I would say from my experiences regarding CBT, I wouldn't by any means discard it. If anything, as I mentioned on our prior conversation, my prior appearance, that do endeavor to maintain an open door, be it open-minded policy. Don't by any means discard anything. Have, if anything, it may be a case of you having to incorporate and maybe combine things as means of then having any effect. But they all do retain a degree of merit.
CBT was good for you? It's effective?
CBT was intriguing, although it didn't necessarily benefit me as much. Although the fact that I had the CBT group sessions where other people of similar, albeit diverse backgrounds, were suffering from this condition. And that's where, going back to manic depression, Ross, as it were, and Dave, I feel sorry that I can, when I, people, many of my colleagues in the class.
Both Russ and I have got first names as surnames, so it's absolutely fine. It's,
again, forgive me in that error, but I was saying, Phil, that
because I didn't exactly make an award-winning introduction for you, so don't you worry about it. It's all good.
On the contrary, it was very much, your introduction was, as I mentioned,
his introduction was rubbish. Don't be polite. It was awful. Come on.
I can assure you, a sense of modesty is now, again, as I said,
got a lot to be modest about, quite frankly.
Indeed.
Hey,
nonetheless,
now, listen up. Sandra Butler, we're talking about CBT. So it's really interesting, see the way that you're resonating with people. Sandra Butler, I've had CBT, and this is one way we got to the bottom of everything. And of course, I opened up about everything that had gone on for over 40 years, 40, in my private life. I'd kept it from everybody within the extended family, more because who'd believe the outsider who'd been adopted into this family. Sandra's giving us a little tiny peek into some of the reasons why she had such a hell of a bad time. But thank you for that, and thank you for sharing. So let me ask you another question. You did group CBT. What's that?
I said, feel free to say no.
Would I ever reject? Never. Me, decline? Never.
Yeah, that's right. Now, when you left that room with group CBT, did you say to yourself, thank God I don't have their problems? Did you not come out thinking that?
Yes. Okay, so this was another aspect to which I was going to allude to. Yes, that I'm by no means comparing or contrasting, quite the contrary.
No. But you just think few.
But nonetheless, there were so many people, Russ, within that group, as it were, that I encountered who were suffering from all the extreme manic depression, were they would literally not even depart their four walls. They were literally confined on a consistent basis.
Horrible.
And even then, there were those that had indulged in self-harm in various degrees, and also had consistently contemplated extreme measures with regards to, as it was, suicide, albeit to completely end their lives. So for me then, from a purely comparative perspective, knowing that in my case, my depression is not necessarily of the degree, albeit all that kind of severity compared to my counterparts, was somewhat reassuring. However, nonetheless, it was also a stark reminder that I'm very much in a vast ship in terms of those that suffer from this condition in varying forms. I'm not by any means confined to myself anyway very much. It's not by any means an exclusive scenario. Quite the contrary. It's one that is, if anything, ever accumulating in terms of its coverage on those that suffer from this condition.
Now, Andrea Lucas, and good morning to you, Andrea. She's saying this, call manic depression by its proper name, bipolar, which is much more severe, although both have similar roots, but bipolar goes very high or extremely low.
It does. It does. Again, this is where that persistent fluctuation manifests itself. It is never consistent or stable. It is one extreme or the other. This is where, again, like anything, you want to, I suppose, hypothetically or ideally tilt a balance. But with bipolar and the manic depression, the prospects are non-existent, given that you are subject to the extremities on a consistent basis. One day could be one thing, the next day could be quite the other end of the spectrum. This is where, for you then to want to very much attain a degree of normality, if you want to call normality, as I say, however you define it, in those circumstances, the prospects have become that much more arduous to the extent of being mission impossible almost.
Let me ask you this, all right? Because you're a person who thinks deeply about stuff, and you've just used the word normality. And I genuinely feel that what we considered normal is just slipping away day by day. And do you sometimes think, I don't know what is normal anymore?
If you're alluding to obviously the current ongoing COVID-19,
the world in which it's everything. The world in which we live in, not just COVID, but the general angst, the general anger, the division, this kind of feudalism that we're experiencing. Hard to know what normal is.
Well, I would say even then, the very definition of normal as a notion, as it were, Ross, would, for me, perhaps, I would argue, if anything, is highly subjective. Our perception of normality, I guarantee, would vary individually.
Give that man a medal. I've said this for years. Seriously, honestly, normality is what you make it. Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted. Do carry on, sir.
No, on the contrary, Phil, and that's actually also a valid point to incorporate in the bigger discussion.
You never say that to Rosemary West, do you?
No.
There are degrees. There's sort of boundaries of what is normal.
So for me, again, Ross,
Harold Shipman, that's not normal.
Hang on. That's what's acceptable. It's not what's normal.
Morally, I think, morally acceptable, but morally very much valid as a transgression. But with regards to Ross, going back to your initial question, as regarding normality, for me, such a be it ongoing development, somewhat unprecedented, albeit very seldom encountered in our lifetime, as this ongoing pandemic, as it were. And in general, as I mentioned to you prior, this should now serve as a conduit for a time of major reflection, both individually and collectively as a society, and one then that would subsequently render, albeit have that platform for substantial change in all facets, be it cultural, economic, socially, in every single field of endeavor. We would think for the better, on a very much on a positive, be it productive, constructive, be it note. Again, for me, can we now, normality, I would say now, again, and I reiterate this, define normality as a notion first and foremost. I guarantee you there will be such a plurality of thoughts there, schools of thought regarding what normality entails. Where do we start? Where do we finish? But you're right, Ross. Yes, I can say that for me, I have witnessed, again, like you, I have witnessed this. Be it somewhat of a swift decline, I would say, somewhat of maybe a worrying decline in so many aspects or facets of life. That normality we're very much accustomed to, very much we conventionally deem as being is swiftly eroding itself to the extent of it being non-existent, or be it diminishing completely or vanishing.
So, do you find? But you see, I guess the point I was trying to make, when someone like yourself, well, any of us, but we're talking to you, so let's just deal with you for the moment. But somebody like yourself, when you're trying to rebuild your life, which you're doing, but you find, because of the world, that the foundations that you hope is like shifting sand. It must be even harder. That's what I'm guessing here.
It is, Ross. However, let me say this. On the one hand, there's an element of, be it maybe disheartenment at regards to how things are transpiring in so many regards. However, conversely speaking, from a more, be it positive outlook for me, this also then constitutes opportunity on the long term. Given then that then when the smoke clears eventually, there'll be a major vacuum rendered. And it's for me then to hopefully maybe to exploit that potential in a positive manner, then to be able to then conjure, or be it forge something new, something then that can then serve as a cornerstone or a foundation for other than things to subsequently.
I love that idea. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
It's actually that's sort of fueling the notion, quite rightly so. So like small steps, as it were, that cornerstone idea of just sort of starting off at the root, and then do you know what I mean? It's sort of not trying to tackle everything head on.
No, you're right. Again, doing so on a, be it gradual but consistent manner, one that very much does entail sustained, be it success and progress. Otherwise, for you then to, again, rush, as it were, these things, especially one that does require diligence and be it thorough thought and attention, would then be foolhardy in that regard. So yes, certainly, either way, it's one that it's an evolutionary, be it process, as opposed to revolutionary.
Unbelievably enough, now I'm afraid that, would you know it, we've sort of managed to spend so much time talking to you again that we've kind of run out of time. But thank you so much for joining us again and coming back and just continuing to fascinate us. Seriously, I mean, keep coming back. Really, we can't get enough. So
let me say, as always, the pleasure and privilege is mine, as always. Thank you, and I look forward to our pending encounters.
The pleasure's ours. It really is. You're an extraordinary person. You really are. You're an extraordinary guy. You take care of yourself.
And again, I thank you for giving me that, as always, that platform to be able to come and discuss these critical matters with you. And I look forward to our future encounters.
Anytime. We're here for you. All
right. Well, enjoy the weekend. Have a good weekend. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. What an amazing guy. I love that guy. He's amazing. And he just wrote to me. It all started because he just started to kind of write to me on Facebook. Can I read this out? This is a horrible thing, and I'm apologizing in advance. It's not a gag. Paul Claridge, who we love. Russ, can we have a mention of our friend Suishi? Now, Suishi is someone who has been a Facebook friend for years, out in Japan. Never met, but we just correspond as Suishi does with a lot of people.
He does send lots of nice photos.
Yeah, he does. The photos are great. It's interesting stuff because I don't know anybody in Japan, so it's kind of interesting to. It's not like a pen pal or anything, but it's just an interesting glimpse, right? That isn't London. Anyway, Suishi, according to Paul Harridge, he is currently in hospital in Tokyo after suffering a mental breakdown. I'll come on to this in a sec. Very sadly, a friend of his was killed in an accident a few days ago. This seems to have tipped Suishi over the edge. He apparently considered suicide, but reached out via social media and is hopefully getting the help he needs. You know, one of the good things about social media is that's great. And one of the horrible things, it's like sometimes sitting up on a side of a hill and watching two trains you know are going to crash, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, you can start shouting from the hillside, but the engine drivers aren't going to hear you because they're coming around the bend. And I could see Suishi's posts getting darker and darker, you know, and the most you can do is, are you all right, or are you okay, or anything we can do? Well, he's in Japan, I'm in London.
But do you think that is what you can do, though? Because I've often wondered sort of at what point do you intervene? Not you. What point does one intervene? It's not you per se. It's just a case you can see someone going down a bit of a slippery slope, and you have to think, is now the right time to say something? And if I do say something, are they going to take offense to that? If they take offense, are they going to do anything silly?
You know what, Phil? I don't think, my personal view is I don't think you should overthink it. I don't think you should overthink it. You know, if I get a phone call sometimes from my mates like Larry or Lloyd or something, they say, what do you want? What do you want? And they're just phoning you to see if you're okay. I say, yeah, I'm good. And it's just love. A comedian friend of mine, Danny Postill, who's a brilliant impressionist. And Danny, out of the blue, phoned me the other night, and I was just crying with laughter. He was just made me laugh. And you know what, Phil? I realized I hadn't laughed like that for months and months, and he was just cracking me up because he's a naturally very funny guy. We met up. We were both doing at the same venue at the Edinburgh Fringe last year where we had lives. God, that seems like a century ago, doesn't it? I think about the Edinburgh Fringe. Honestly, it feels about 10 years ago. It was just over a year ago. It's extraordinary. And we met and we got on, we became pals. And just to get that phone call was such a fillip, no pun intended, such a boost. It was lovely. It was just great. You know, I enjoyed it so much. Thank you, Danny.
Laughter is, and you know, actually,
laughter is a wonderful thing.
I love it when it happens spontaneously as well, not when you go looking. If you watch a comedy, you expect to laugh. It doesn't always happen.
No,
But when
that's
when you least expect it, that's when it's
well, that's the thing is, when we'd have a very heavy show, we'd leave the studio in Covent Garden, you and I, we'd go off to the Soho Whiskey Club above a little shop. There was nothing grand. No. And it was just a bunch of people just being funny and having not because they're drinking and with a cigar or something, they just chill out. And that sort of spontaneous humor is a fantastic thing. Which of course leads me back to thinking that with the arts utterly destroyed, that's what's missing. I mean, that's just one of the things that's missing. And you don't, like the Joni Mitchell song, you don't realize it's gone till it's gone. Paul Andrews, where would be without a laugh? ITV.
Quite.
That's very good. That is very good, isn't it? That's very, and laughter's subjective, but I love it. Like making. I know it has all sorts of chemical releases in your brain and your system, but it's just bloody good having a laugh. It's just lovely. I love it.
I have to say, I can already see our next guests. One of our next guests, actually. The other guest is, well, I think I'm looking at his stealing at the moment, but
that's nice. That sounds attractive.
Hey, look,
I've got to put the kettle on. I've seriously got to, because that is my new thing of hot water in a minute. I'm sorry. So I'll be back. I'll be 20 seconds. You pretend you're a professional broadcaster. You carry on.
Good Lord. You really wouldn't get this on the Today Show, would you? Could you imagine John Humphreys just turning around and saying, I'll be just back in a moment. I'm just going to put the kettle on just before we go over live to America to find out what the situation with the president and the first lady is. Yeah, right. That wouldn't happen. Anyway, never mind. I suppose this is a rather appropriate time, though, for me to remind you that you are unbelievably listening or possibly even watching Men's Radio Station on a Friday with Russ, Kane and me, Phil, Dave. Don't forget, if at any time you want to join in, if you are watching this live, we love getting your comments. You're always very good at this, but I'm now talking to new viewers and new listeners as well, because I'm very aware that it sometimes comes across a little bit like an exclusive club, and it's absolutely not meant to be that. Men's Radio is for everybody. Even if it's called Men's Radio, we still don't care what sex you are. It's very simple. Please do comment along on Facebook. You can do that on Twitter as well. Just make sure you mention either at Russell Kane or at Mr. Phil Dave, or even at Men's Radio STN, and we will see your message and we'll try and read it out. And we also stream live on YouTube, so there's loads of ways you can watch and loads of ways that you can interact with us. Coming up a little later, by the way, at around, I reckon, 1 o'clock, we're going to be joined by, some might say, radio royalty. Yes, well, all of our guests are radio royalty as far as I'm concerned, but anyway, radio royalty in the form of Dr. Pam Spur. Now, you may know Dr. Pam for her brilliant work in radio and podcasting, and she is going to be joining us. She'll be talking about what she's up to at the moment and giving us loads of essential advice that only Dr. Pam knows how to do. And we're also at about 1:30.
Dr. Pam.
Yes, and about 1:30 this afternoon, just for a change, we're going to be talking television with the lovely Chantel Rickards. But before all of that, I'm delighted to say that we're no longer looking at a ceiling. I can now see both our guests poised as springs, waiting in the wings.
Sounds like your love life.
Thanks. It's time to welcome. I literally don't even know how to respond. What am I supposed to do with a comment like that? Seriously.
Nothing.
Anyway, let's now welcome to Men's Radio Station on a Friday with Ross Kane and Phil Dave, Steve Jackson and Bernadette Bruckner. You're very welcome indeed. Good afternoon.
Bernadette Bruckner, there she is.
Hi, Ross.
Top of the morning to you. Are you all right, Bernadette? Is everything all right?
Oh, my God. Steve, stand up for me. We haven't even started, and Ross is giving me a hard time here.
Steve, could I ask a favour? Steve, this is going to sound dreadfully pedantic and probably not in the least bit entertaining to our listeners, but I might ask, is it okay if you rotate your device 90 degrees so we can see you in landscape? Because then you fill the screen and it looks much better. Is that okay?
I can't hear a word. You're breaking up terrible.
Steve looks like he's going to come around and punch you in the head.
It's fine. I'm used to that look from guests for some reason. All okay, Steve? Can you hear us?
Can't hear us. I'm going to talk to Bernadette. I'm going to talk to Bernadette. First of all, how are you? How are you?
I'm going to make a suggestion.
How are you, Russ?
Can I make a suggestion? You two have a good old catch up. I'm going to phone Steve and I'm going to see if we can't get this sorted.
It's almost like your producer. It's an amazing thing. First of all, Bernadette, you look great. Thank you so. Am I allowed to say that these days? I would say that to anybody, man or woman. So I hope that's okay. You know, I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to find myself on the front page of the Sun, or arrested indeed. Thank you so much for. I know how busy you are. You're like the busiest person in the world. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, we have been working on a very exciting project, and I'd love you to tell everybody about it because I was so psyched when we were doing this.
Do you mean, by any chance, the great project that we're doing for the launch of £100,000 worth of free mental health courses?
Yes, I
from
do.
line workers from the NHS? Indeed. We're really excited to be working with the men's radio station and the women's radio station with this event. And we've made it, Russ, so simple for people to be able to have access to those courses. Your radio station there, the men's radio station, kindly put up a wonderful page, and it is simple as people visiting that page, clicking on the link, and it's very, very easy from there on in. They just choose which course they want, and it's there for them.
Now, in case people are thinking, I must have misheard, you're not. With Bernadette and Steve, men's radio station, and in conjunction with our sister station, women's radio station, Bernadette and Steve, it's £100,000 worth of free mental health courses. There is no catch. There is no, oh, it's free now and then you got to pay later. There's none of that nonsense. There's no free trial. It is not any of that at all. These courses are entirely free. No charge, no cost, nothing. No subscription, no catches. It really is what it says on the tin. And that's why we are so thrilled to be working with Bernadette and Steve. You go onto the website, you can go onto our men's radio station website. You go onto, Bernadette's going to tell you all about her website in a minute, and you choose the course that you want for nothing, for free. Back to you, Bernadette.
It is exactly as simple as that, Russ. When Steve and I were talking about halfway through the first lockdown in the month of May, we really felt that it would be so great to give back something that would really benefit all the people that have been working behind the scenes, not just the doctors and the nurses, but the porters, the people that have worked in the canteens, anybody who's been ostensibly a frontline worker, keeping the country going. And we thought, these people are seeing things that have never, ever been witnessed in our lifetimes before, maybe through wars, maybe soldiers have seen it when they've gone overseas and done action. But normal people, Ross, they wouldn't have been in an environment where this kind of fear was out there in the community. To think about what the nurses and doctors and support staff must have seen in the height of the coronavirus when we were touching 40,000 people dead from it. It must have been horrific for them. So we were thinking, well, they've got to take that home with them. And perhaps they don't have access to mental health, through their employers. Everybody was working flat out at 1,000 miles an hour. They weren't going to have time to go and see a counsellor themselves and talk about how these things were really affecting them. So that's really where Steve and I felt that if we could get something really easy for them to log on to and do something on their phone or their tablet as soon as they get 5 minutes and keep taking care of themselves. So one of the first courses, it'd probably be helpful if I walk through some of the courses with our listeners.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah. The course that I prefer for people is mental health awareness. And that course, I'm just checking my notes on it there, is wonderful because it helps normal people identify common mental health illnesses in themselves and their work colleagues.
Now, Bernadette, I'm sorry to butt in here, but that's really interesting because honestly, I think that is one of the biggest drawbacks when it comes to mental health is people don't actually know what they're looking for, do they? This is half the battle.
This is very, very true that, sometimes people think they're having a bad day, but in reality, it's not just a bad day, that it's reoccurring and it's going on longer and longer, but they still keep thinking it's just bad time. They're not actually realizing these are symptomatics of the beginning of potentially mental health problems.
Can I just say at this stage as well, sorry, that we have got Steve. Steve's actually going to join us on the phone because sadly the technology is against us. So Steve, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay, we got Steve. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll have Steve on the phone. So he'll still be there in the background, but he's part of this conversation, absolutely.
Yeah, no problem.
So Steve, now you can hear us. On behalf of everybody at Men's Radio and Women's Radio, just want to say a huge thank you for hooking up with us with this amazing £100,000 initiative. It's a wonderful thing. We were thrilled to be part of it, and we just think, even standing objectively, it's a tremendous thing to do. So congratulations to you both, and huge thanks.
It's good for the people. It's good for everybody, especially because access to counsel is very difficult with obviously more social isolation again. And the way forward these days, especially for counsellors, accessing their patients is going to be more and more online because we've changed both our buying and purchasing habits, social habits over the past 6 to 7 months. And it'd be very difficult to go back to the way it was. In fact, I don't think it'll ever go back to the way it was.
Do you know, Steve, I was going to ask you that, and then I want to ask the same question to Bernadette. And you've touched it. Do you think things will go back to what was seen as the old normal or pre-February?
No, never.
Wow.
The reason that all the big companies have put certain things in place. You'll find a lot more people working from home. That could cause them social isolation because we're a sociable people at the best of times. A lot of people only meet other people when they go to work because a lot of people don't go socialising at night or weekend. So their social interaction with people will become less and less. But it's something that was going to change the society. It's never ever going to be the same ever. And the fact
you work with a lot of you're much more in the medical community than Phil and myself are. One of the things, I know this is a slight side issue, but I'm just very thrilled to have you both on the show because I've been trying to get this for ages, and your diaries didn't work and our diaries didn't work. But anyway, here you are. One of the things that our local GP surgery is saying is we're never going to open the same as we were. We're never going to do that again. Do you think they're going to use this as an excuse to get rid of as many patients as they can, not to actually have them in the surgery?
Well, it's a catch-22 situation. They've got the COVID-19, which in big inverted commas, well, they'll turn out years to come, but it was one of the biggest jokes, cons, and caused the amount of people that have died and will die in the next few years because they've not been able to get treatment from the doctors. They've not been able to get the regular treatment from the hospital. They've not been diagnosed. Nobody's taking into account all those people that could be carrying disease over the past 6 months that haven't been diagnosed. So the effects will certainly, I think, kick in. The biggest time will be probably March, April next year. And that will be a major crisis in this country. Major.
Because I know you weren't on to talk about this, but now the door's open. I've got to go in. Why do you think that March, April 2021 is going to be this crisis?
The reason being, everybody's still for Christmas. Everybody's still for Christmas. The banks will start wanting the money back. People will be being laid off left, right, and centre, going on the dole. Can't afford the mortgages. Can't afford the bills. That's why it's going to start in I reckon, March, April next year.
Well, I mean, we can already, Steve, it just for the record, financial changes are already coming into force this month. It's the end of the furlough scheme. Repossession will start again this month. That is now allowed again. and you've got loads of other bits and pieces that are just chopping and changing, because the only thing that was on a break, mortgage holiday breaks are over with now. You can't, there's no such thing as a mortgage holiday anymore, so you've got to start paying the mortgages again. And maybe rightly so, maybe not rightly so, but one way or another, it would suggest that there's a bit of disparity between people's actual financial situations and the sudden ending of financial support to sort of almost wean yourself out of those situations. It's almost a bit abrupt, but I kind of in some way get it, because the money is not a bottomless pit and we're all going to pay for it one way or another.
Well, we're still going to be paying for it for decades. This government hasn't got the money to pay for it in the first place. It's just borrowed it. I mean, that's the only way they're going to get it back is taxes and more pressure on people, which then affects people's mental health. Next year, massive in all areas, mental health. We would talk to the doctor for my surgery. He's already up over 50% treating people with antidepressants.
This is inevitable. This is inevitable. This is absolutely inevitable, which is why we were determined to work as hard as we could on Men's Radio, because you didn't need to be a genius to see that this was going to be an absolute one of the first side effects of this, that mental health would just explode.
Yeah. It affects people in many ways. People don't realise it's affecting them, but social isolation, which is what the government are doing, is one of the biggest effects. And that causes more, I mean, the biggest killer in the country is stress. It brings your body down, so you're susceptible to more diseases. You haven't got a stronger immune system if your body's stressed. So stress actually causes a lot of problems, because it reduces your total immune system, so therefore you become more vulnerable to anything that's out there.
Well, like my late mum used to say, I'll be honest with you, my late mum had a great expression. She said, well, it doesn't go to your boots. And it's true. It doesn't go to your boots. If you're going through intense stress and prolonged stress, it won't just disappear. It goes somewhere. Which brings us back pretty neatly, he says, bringing it back on course, to your amazing £100,000 initiative. Steve, can you walk us through just what people have to do while you're on the line? Then we'll go back to Bernadette.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple. They just have to log in to get a code. They can then access the information. There's various courses there. There's some that we explain that you're going to have to give us a bit more information, because there's some courses at like £99 plus that, or right up to about £400 plus that. But the more, obviously, the higher ones, I've had more people that know a bit about mental health, or higher up in a company, or something like that. Already know it's not for people who know nothing about mental health and then suddenly go, because they won't understand the course. But we don't stop anybody, any frontline worker, any NHS staff that wants to have a look at it. I haven't got a problem.
So all they have to do, and I'm going to walk this through again, because people must be saying, it can't be that easy. It is that easy. You go on to Mental Health Solutions in Business Limited, go onto their website. You can go onto the Men's Radio and Women's Radio. Let's go onto the Men's Radio website. You can get details there. There's a little summary of each of the courses. Pick the course you want, and off you go. Now, can I just explain the £100,000? In other words, what Mental Health Solutions in Business Limited are doing, which is you and Bernadette and your team, is once £100,000 worth has gone, it's gone. That's it. It doesn't mean that one person can have £100,000 worth of free mental health. It means that
it's one person per course. That's
correct. One person per course. But as they say, once it's gone, it's gone. So hurry while the stocks last. That's what I was.
Anyone would think you work in marketing, Russell, with that.
I used to be in advertising for many, many years. Now, Bernadette, have you seen an increase in the demand as people are thinking, what the hell's happening to us?
Very much so. I think that an awful lot of employers are scratching their heads. They are bound by legislation to take care of their employees' mental health, whether they're in the office or whether they're at home. But nobody has come forward and said, here's the magic formula. Here's what you've got to do to keep your staff healthy at home. And what Steve said is very much on the ball. People are now working in isolation at home. They're feeling lonely. They haven't got the backup of their bosses. They haven't got the backup of friends and work colleagues to keep them going. And in the beginning, this was great fun. It was all great. We can work from home, get up 5 minutes before you go to work and hop out like Russ did a few minutes ago and get a coffee. But after a while, the excitement of that wears off, and now we're in the reality. Steve said the money is starting to run out. Furloughs coming to an end. Real hardships are on the way for everybody. And at Mental Health Solutions in Business, we know that the employers are going to get very, very hard hit. And they're going to be looking for ways to help their staff remotely. Now, some companies have returned to work, but there's a lot of self-isolation going on. But the whole atmosphere has changed, and even adapting to working in a workplace where you're now socially distanced from your colleagues must be very, very hard for people.
Bernadette, how important is it, though, in terms of when you're treating somebody with some sort of mental health concern, condition, problem, whatever word you want to give it, how important is it, though, to be dealt with in person? As in, like, now we're talking quite happily over a video link. And okay, it's not the same as seeing you in person in the studio, and indeed seeing Steve in person in the studio. Yeah, Russ, I can take or leave. But seeing you in person in the studio, and I wonder sort of like what difference it actually makes, because this is sort of okay. It's not like we can't see each other. Is this any substitute?
It is a great substitute, Phil, and it is the way forward. It's the way forward for lots of companies, not just counsellors who are now hopping online, particularly onto our new website, counsellorsnow.com. The quality of private video streaming these days, particularly if they're using the Counsellors Now website, is of such high definition, and the intimacy of the therapy room online is really high quality. Therapists and clients are able to have successful counselling sessions online, and a lot of research has been done with this, particularly across Germany and in the States. And really, they're finding that online counselling is as beneficial as meeting face-to-face. Bottom line, guys, is meeting face-to-face for the foreseeable future is out the door. People need counselling. They're going to have to hop online. And once they've tried it, they will realise, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
But is there a concern for its potency? So in other words, if it was done online over video, is there a concern that it might not be as effective? Let me give you maybe an extreme example, but an example that I can think of. Is if you have someone who is a touch volatile, and Steve, by the way, if you feel you want to answer this as well, I'm more than happy for either of you to answer. This is aimed at both of you as far as I'm concerned. But if you have someone who's in a bit of a volatile situation, and they are feeling a bit vulnerable, maybe a bit of a loose cannon, to offer some sort of cliche for it, and with a screen, if something is said that triggers something, they have the ability to turn that screen off. If it's in person, there's almost nowhere to run. Do you see what I mean? And I wonder whether or not if that's a concern.
For us, it's not a concern. Sorry, Steve, I'll let you hop on in a moment, because Phil, if you think about it, if somebody goes into crisis right now and they need to speak to somebody right now, it isn't going to happen for them. They've got to make an appointment and go there. Whereas if they can hop online and speak to somebody, and counsellors always have security in place. They will have telephone numbers for that person. So if they hop offline, if they hop off that online counselling session, a good therapist will know to pick up the phone and call them straight away, text them straight away. So it's not like they can just hop off the session and they're going, absolutely spare at home, and there's no support for them. What do you think?
The reality is, Bernadette, if you were in a session with a therapist or a counsellor, and it got suddenly, to use Phil's phrase, very volatile, they can just march out the door. and no one's going to restrain them. You might just say, "Please come back, please come back," but you're not going to do that. You can just walk out the door.
You know, but there's a difference though. But I can't expect if there's someone's going to walk out the door, then said therapist could potentially chase after them and try and change.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Phil, they wouldn't. They would never do that.
In danger.
They'd never do that. If somebody gets out of a therapy session and walks, you would leave them, and they would walk out. So in that regard, between doing that and doing that, it's pretty similar. But as Bernadette says, there are great safety measures, which is very reassuring to know, because I wasn't sure about that. So thank you for clarifying that it would be a follow-up. There'd be texts and phone calls immediately to make sure that person was safe. Do you?
The other point that you're missing, Russ, is a very, very big point. People that like live in Scotland, the Outer Hebrides, right? They want to see a counsellor. They have a 7-hour drive one way, 7-hour drive back for an hour session. How much? Not only the time and effort, but how much money does it cost them?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They can go on to speak to a counsellor in the Outer Hebrides in the comfort of their own home. That's the big advantage. You can be on the toilet if you feel comfortable talking, still be on the toilet. You're in the comfort of your own home or wherever you feel most comfortable.
Now, Steve, now I know why you turned your video off. Okay, that makes more sense.
I'm sure it was true. But there's a lot of areas where people, we've talked about basically about the Counsellors Now website, where people can access the information which is linked up to the mental health solutions in business. It just gives people the flexibility and the choice. So it's a choice. I mean, if you want to drive 3 hours, find somewhere to park, go and see somebody for an hour, pay your parking fine, pay your counsellor, and drive back for 3 hours, that's your prerogative.
Well, you've just described the Amazon business model, haven't you? That's exactly the point. Why would I do that? Why bother?
Yeah. Why is Amazon? Why is Amazon growing so big and so fast now? Because everybody's ordering online. Everything. Okay. They're ordering the groceries, they're ordering booze, they're ordering the clothes, the shoes, the television. Everything's going online. I know we've got into the habit. I didn't used to order anything online, but because of this shutdown, I had to do. So I'm now ordering stuff online. I've very rarely ordered any stuff online. Very rarely. But this lockdown has forced people to order online. If you wanted something in the house, well, you could literally get it. It was online. You couldn't go to a store and get it. They were all shut. Some decoration for your house online.
I have a view, Steve. I'd like both yours and Bernadette's opinion on this. As unpleasant and as horrible as this is, and it is, it's the new reality. It's where we're at. There's no point pretending about it. This is where we have found ourselves, and I think, as you have done, I'd like to think as we have done in our very small way, you have to adapt and evolve or die. That's it. If you don't adapt, you will perish. There's no point in harking back to how it was. It's like me saying, right, Bernadette, I'm going to send you a fax. And you'd go, well, I don't have a fax machine. Right, Bernadette, I'm going to send you a telex. Well, I don't have a telex machine. Oh, well, I want that. Well, those days have gone. So as much as I can't stand how life is in 2020, I rail against it. Until you can do something about it, you have to adapt. We've adapted the way that the radio stations work. I've adapted the way that I work, that Phil work, that you are working, and you have to do it. Very difficult if you're trying to manufacture a car or make widgets or produce baked beans. That's slightly different, but it's hugely different. But we've had to adapt, and that's how it is.
Well, as I say, it's a very big change to our whole society. I mean, never in the history, as far as records go back, have they shut the pubs. Never even during the World Wars were the pubs closed. Right. Never. And yet this time we were locked up for months without going to pubs or going to restaurants or all that, and only so many people here and so many people there.
It's really strange you say that, actually, Steve, because it was only this morning that I was speaking to a colleague of mine as we were leaving work, because where I work first thing in the morning, I travel in with my colleague, we drive in together and we drive back home together. The reason we do that is just to minimize going on public transport and to limit our interaction with other people. But as we were driving back, I don't remember how it came up in conversation, but we were talking about how neither of us had stepped foot in a pub since the start of the year. And I was saying, actually, when I think about it, I really miss it. And it's really odd because I always used to lambast pubs. I always used to think they're such filthy places, really grotty individuals who hang around, some of them, and obviously going to the wrong ones. But the point is that some very grotty people who hang around them sometimes, who don't know how to behave, alcohol fuels a whole load of problems, that kind of thing. But actually, when you think about it, the environment is so taken for granted, or it was taken so much for granted, and I never really realized the positive impact something as simple as going to a public house actually had on mental health until it was taken away.
That's true. That's very true, because it's just a place of relaxing and getting away your frustration and expressing it with friends. So you've had a rough day at work, and you talk yourselves down between the three of you or four of you. So if you're having a bloody shit day at work this week, this has gone wrong, that's gone wrong. Well, mine's not been too bad, but you talk between your people that are there. You talk each other down, and then you become more relaxed and more calm. That's just the way it is. But all this has stopped all that, so you get more pent up frustration. I mean, divorce rates are up by 50% as well. They reckon abuse rates I've not got figures for them, but they're massive at the moment. Some of these people have survived through this. I feel sorry for these people that have been in a flat with 2 kids. Christ almighty, there's no garden for them. Or they call, people.
It's hell. Steve, it's a vision of hell, because what you are is effectively, and I'm not saying this a political way. It's just the truth of the matter is you're under house arrest. You're kind of under house arrest. If you gave it another title, that would be it. You're under house arrest. Well, I haven't done anything. Yeah. Even so, you're under house arrest. How bad do you think you two have got your finger on the pulse? This is your business, mental health solutions in business. This is your business. How bad do you think the aftermath of this is going to be? And what's your estimates between you and your colleagues? Because you must speak to other people in your industry and your field. How long do you think it's going to take before people are feeling whatever normal was, or better?
Well, that depends on the circumstances, doesn't it? 1 second. If you've got a job to go back to and got the money coming in, they're going to adapt a lot easier than somebody that's been on furlough and then is suddenly made redundant. And then he's on the dole, because he's got then the problem of his standard of living. So it's different. And to put figures on it, the government are banning about, I think, over 1 million people extra will be on the dole within the next few months.
I think that's probably conservative. I actually, in my heart of hearts, think that's a conservative figure.
I agree with it.
I really think that's a conservative figure there. So the services that you and Bernadette offer are really going to be in more demand than ever. I would have that's my guess.
Yes.
Ross, the services should be more in demand than ever. But as Steve and I discussed a few weeks ago, at the moment, the employers are fighting for their lives to keep business coming in. And although mental health is now such a big thing and it should be up there with their priorities, some of them might unfortunately take their eye off the ball, which we'd understand, to look at business and try and keep invoices being paid. But we will, and we are starting to see a huge growth with people wanting to, do more for their employees. If I could backtrack what you said a few minutes ago, it's going to take a long time for this new normal to bed in. And it's going to be there for a long, long time to come. One day, this newness will be our normal, and people will
Yes.
begin to forget about the past.
Yeah.
So there is that to look forward to, but it's a long way away. And for people, it's going to be such a dramatic change. If people don't cope well with change, it's going to be really hard, and it's going to get darker before it gets brighter. And I don't mean to sound pessimistic.
Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, Bernadette. It's only because I've known you and I've met you a few times. It's this, and Steve, please then chime in. And it's difficult. I've got to be careful how I pose this thing. When we met, and one of the things we met at was, and Steve came up with some brilliant lines when we met at a big conference, and it's all very well. People, I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to trample all over it. Forgive me, but a lot of people pay lip service to mental health in business because they're in business, so they've got to keep their business going. So some of it is legislation, and some of it comes from a good place, right? That's great. With people scrabbling to keep their businesses alive, one, it might well go down the totem pole of importance. And two, do you think it would give, which would be a crying shame, but do you think it'll give people an excuse to turn back the clock to how employees were treated in the past?
Yes, I'll answer that. That's a big yes. We discussed this, myself and Bernadette, a good few months ago, and I said, I've been in business, I've been in a few businesses, and I know a lot of the small, medium, mid-sized businesses. The last thing that's going to be on their minds now is mental health. Because trust me, those owners of business will have more mental health issues than the workers that are in the workplace. They'll have so much stress on them, and then they're going to try and sort somebody else's mental health stress out in the workplace. How do you cope? How does our business cope? It's all right saying yes, they need to put it in place. I totally agree. The law states they've got to put it in place. Well, if I was a secondary businessman, certainly for the next 12 to 18 months, the first thing I'd be doing is surviving.
Yes. It's inevitable, isn't it? It's inevitable, and I think to say anything else is being, I don't like to use the word delusional, but not being realistic, perhaps. They want to keep the factory going. They want to keep the shop going, whatever it might be. Whatever that business is, their one aim is to keep going.
Yeah. Well, I'll just give you another example. We did a talk before about bullying and, bullying in the workplace.
Yeah.
So I was talking about that, and I said there's various, which is true. Bullying starts from a very early age. It goes all the way to school, and it goes into the workplace. Yeah. So it's something like 20 years down the road of this person being a bully. They might not even know they're being a bully. And then you expect the employer to sort it out when the government should have stepped in the early stages. Now, I'll tell you who the biggest bullies are in the country.
Yeah.
The banks, the tax man.
Oh, the banks. Well, well.
They're the biggest bullies. They put businesses and personal people under the most pressure. And then they talk about bullying. They put them under the biggest pressure, which is financial.
My dad used to have a great expression about banks. He'd say they lend you an umbrella in the summer. As soon as it starts raining, they want it back.
That's perfectly true. That's a bank all over. They've always been the same.
Yeah. And I know it's a slight aside, but when I see all these lovely, cuddly, fuzzy, warm, gorgeous adverts on TV for various banks, and you go, it's garbage. You'd rip our lungs out if you need to. There comes a point when you just say, well, the hell with you, and they'll take your house. They don't care. So whether it's lovely horses running in fields or charming people all looking happy and having a marvelous time, they're banks. That's what they are.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Why I like you so much, Steve, why I like you so, I've said this to Bernadette many, many times. Why I like you so much, Steve, is that, you're doing stuff which is at a really high level, a really high intellectual level as well. And yet you are probably one of the top 5 most down-to-earth blokes I have ever met. That's what I love about it. You take really complicated things, you go, and then in your fabulously blunt way, you just get to the heart of the matter, and it's true. You don't dance around the issues. That's what I admire. Does that sound ridiculous?
I appreciate that. That's very nice of you, Russ. But it's no good dance. I've learned in life, it's no good trying to dance about something. You've got to get to the root cause and try and fix it. No matter what it may be, whether it's your mental health or your house or whatever it is, it's no good dancing around and saying, "Oh, blah blah blah." You just got to decide what you're going to do and do it.
Melanie Hutchins, one of our listeners, Melanie with an O. Go figure. We've talked about it. I think we're in the middle of some kind of reset. And she said, "I work for a bank. It's vicious. I left."
Yeah.
I just say also as well, I feel like we're giving the banks here quite a hard time. This is not first and foremost the purpose of men's radio, and secondly, not only that, I think a lot of people would probably be in trouble without banks. So let's not completely rip them apart.
No. But Phil, I think you're missing the point. The point is we're talking about stress and mental health.
No, I do.
Money. Having the lack of money,
the banks provide.
Phil, having the lack of money is one of the biggest stressors on the planet.
Absolutely.
The fear of not being able to provide for your family, put food on the table, put a roof over their head, that fear is palpable.
Couldn't agree more. But where do you think that's going to come from if you don't afford it? If you can't afford it, it comes.
I have no idea. I'm not my problem is I'm not being facetious. I'm not an economist. God knows how we're going to dig ourselves out of this, which is why we need people like Bernadette and Steve to give proper professional advice.
All I'm saying is that the money that sort of we are talking about here that causes us a problem, often it's the banking services that help us get out of that predicament. I recognize that people get very stressed with it. I understand people don't like it very much when banks do get on top of them and ask for them to start paying money back. But I think we also need to recognize that we shouldn't lambast them too much, because I think we'd be pretty stuck without them. Anyway, all of that to one side. In terms of you what? Sorry,
I don't. But anyway, there we are. I've got another view. Doesn't matter. Move on. That's not why our guests are here. I want to talk about the £100,000. I want to talk about the £100,000 initiative. It's really interesting, isn't it? You can touch nerves when you're having a conversation. It's fascinating. You never know which way it's going to go. When you were Bernadette? How were you so brave to say to Steve and Steve to say to you, "Let's do this"?
Do you know what?
It's a serious question.
Yeah, Steve and I were pretty in tune mentally around doing something very positive to give back, because we were so impressed with everything that the NHS did. And it wasn't even a question of braveness for us. It just felt like a very normal thing. We were just having a conversation and we said, "Let's do this. Let's just make this happen." It was as natural as that, to be honest with you. And once we started talking about it, we thought, yeah, maybe that would be very well received. From there, we put the thoughts onto paper and got it out to people like yourself who, delightfully hopped on board with us and said, "Yeah, we'll help you do that." Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, I hate the phrase, but to me, it's like a no-brainer, because it's like, what's not to like? You're getting professional help for zero cost, zero commitment. There's no catch. There really is genuinely no catch. It's extraordinary, because I kept looking at it, being the horrible cynic, being the cynic that I am, Bernadette. I thought, yeah, this is good, but I went through it, every detail of the small print, and I kept saying to Howard, my business partner, "This is great. What's going on?" But it is. It's a fantastic altruistic thing that you and Steve are doing, and honestly, thank you both from everybody. I really, really hope people take advantage of this, because it's there. The offer's there. We can do no more than say, "Here it is. Please help yourself."
Yeah.
Is there, Steve? Is there? Do you get an accreditation? Because I haven't. Forgive me, I haven't looked at the paperwork for a few weeks now. But there's an accreditation attached to this as well, is there not?
Yeah, all the coaches are fully CPD accredited. which a lot of professions have to do so many CPT accreditations a year, so it goes to their tally of what they've got to do. It's like refresher courses for doctors and nurses and people like that. So they're all accredited.
So it's not only just, honestly, I sound like back from my advertising days. Hey, everybody, Crazy Eddie. It's not just, come and get your 8-track stereo. It's not just the fact that you're learning stuff, but you're actually getting an accreditation on top of that, and it's costing you nothing. So I just can't see why people won't look at it. Here's a difficult question for you, Bernadette, yet again, but you're really good at fielding these things. 5 minutes ago, we were all standing, in our doorsteps, on our balconies, on the street, banging our saucepans, going, "Yay, NHS!" Suddenly, it's like, why are they so lazy? Why does a public opinion, using your therapy background and everything, just turns on a sixpence? What's that about?
Do you mean like they just stopped going out and handcuffing?
Well, we're told not to do that, so okay, we didn't do that anymore. Fair enough. But just for that moment, we all felt united. We all felt united, didn't we? There was a wonderful moment for just a few weeks. We all thought, yeah, Thursday, 8 o'clock. Yay, this is great. And it's all gone to hell in a handcart.
I think, Russ, sensationalism came into it, and Phil. Once we stopped seeing the graphic details and photographs and video coverages coming out from the NHS hospitals, people dying and the staff crying and very, very overwhelmed. Once all that shock system went out of the media, control started to be lost a little bit. People got brave again and they started to break the rules and venture out. And I don't think that's helped. I don't think clear messages coming from the government hasn't really helped either. And I think they lifted the lockdown, in my personal opinion. I think they lifted it just a little bit too early to stop the transmission. And I don't know where it's going to go in the future. In terms of
my fear is I don't think anybody does.
Well,
I think that's
it's going to go nowhere till we've got a cure. How are you going to stop something when they reckon there's no cure? There's no cure. How are you going to stop it? All that's being done is delaying and delaying the inevitable.
Couldn't agree
If
more.
you haven't got a cure, you can't stop it.
Nope,
You could lock people up for 2 years.
Absolutely couldn't agree with you more, Steve. So I've said it since day one. I mean,
So what would you do, Steve? What would you do? We know Phil's view, because Phil and I've discussed this a lot. But Steve, what you're a professional. What would you do, or what would you have done that's different? If you don't mind me asking, I know that wasn't why you're on, but it's rare that when we get experts like you, we like to drill down on behalf of our listeners. So what would you have done?
I would, first of all, analyse the statistics and facts, right, with what this pandemic, or which areas it attacks. COVID-19 is very similar to another secondary killer, because COVID-19, they've never published any deaths, how many deaths of people have just purely died of COVID-19. Purely COVID-19. They've associated it with cancer, they've associated it with kidney failure, they've associated it with car accidents. So what is the figure that somebody, a fit, healthy bloke or woman, has died purely of COVID-19? Second thing is, it's a secondary killer. So if you're vulnerable, if you're old, and you've got underlying health issues, all those people should be made to stay at home. The rest of the country should carry on wicked. Schools and kids are carriers. They don't get it. They don't get COVID. They carry it and pass it on to the adults. So there's got to be some structure in place where I go, you're vulnerable, you stay at home, the rest of you get back to work. We need the economy going.
bravo,
and that was a straightforward thing. That's the straightforward way of doing it, because this lockdown has done absolutely nothing but put more mental pressure and strain on everybody else, and the death rates are still going up, according to them.
Do you know
actually,
what?
actually, the death rate is no pun intended. The death rate, if you actually look at other stats, is a flat line. I'm not being rude, nor is a joke. Now, I know that we have our next guest who's under strict time constraints because she's got to go off and do TV. We would love you and Steve for just very quickly before you go, Bernadette, tell us how people can get hold of these free £100,000 worth of free mental health courses.
All they need to do is hop onto the Men's Radio Station website, www.mensradiostation.com. They will see a big banner on the page and it says promotion, £100,000 promotion. Click on that link, choose your course. There is a voucher code on the page. When you click the link straight through to our website and pop the course in your shopping basket, pop in the code, it'll get zeroed back to £no and Bob's your uncle. In you go, do your course, and the support is there for you the whole way through.
Might I suggest that you two are a marvel?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I know we're going to have you back on again because there's loads more to discuss. Steve, take care of yourself. Bernadette, always a pleasure to see you, of course. Steve, I'm sorry we couldn't see you, but we could hear you, which is equally as effective. There they go. It's a rushed show today. It's a packed show today. We've got tons to do. Very special guests coming up now. I'm a bit overexcited, to be honest with you. I don't mind telling you. A bit overexcited.
I think all of our guests have been exciting.
They're all exciting, and they're all phenomenal people in all walks of life. That's what I love about it.
But I have to tell you, as soon as I saw that you had sort of a bit of a living legend in the world of the medics coming up on the show, not going to lie, I was pretty excited too.
Yeah, no, I was just thrilled. I've known this person for some years, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Anyway, you do the introductions in your fabulous Phil Dave Hertfordshire manner.
Oh, how very kind. Well, thank you. It's now time to welcome on Men's Radio. Do you know how going to broadcast mode there?
What do you got? Received pronunciation going on there, fella?
Enunciate now. No, in all seriousness, we're so immeasurably flattered that she made time.
Before you do that, I've got to really interrupt 1 second. I'm really, really sorry. I know it's very no. Bear with me, Ed. We're not ignoring you, Ed. I just want you to know, Ed Grossman.
For you, and then he stopped.
I've screwed up. It's my fault. But mea culpa. There we go. What do you want to do? Shoot me, Ed Grossman. There's so many things I want to talk about this. It's a very interesting point. We're trying to get Steve back again, but we just haven't got time now. I don't want to steamroller over your points, which I think are highly valid. Back to you, Philip.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Anyway, look, without further ado, let's bring into the discussion, onto the screen, on the airways.
How do I look?
Yeah. I'll let Dr. Pam answer that. It's only Dr. Pam Sperm. What a delight it is. Dr. Pam, thank you for joining me.
Hello. Oh my gosh. Well, you're looking very handsome as always, Russ. And you too, Phil.
Now you've ruined it. Now I know you're just lying.
No, I'm not lying. I never lie.
Before we get into any serious discussion, because I know we've got limited time with you, but what fabulous artwork you've got behind you, excuse me. Loving.
Oh, thank you. It's two of my paintings because, as Russ knows, he came to one of my exhibitions. I retook a painting last autumn with a vengeance. I do whole weekends where all I do is paint. The family can scavenge for food. They can go without. And I just paint.
You know what, Phil. The last thing that we did before. The last normal thing I did was come to Pam's exhibition at the Century Club on Shaftesbury Avenue and had a fabulous evening. Denise Welsh and a whole load of mates were there, and it was terrific. That was the very last thing we did.
And I planned it that way.
Normal life.
I wanted your normal life to go out with a bang.
With art. It was wonderful.
It was a great evening.
It was a terrific evening, and we laughed, and we enjoyed your art very, very much. What I loved about, I know that's not what you're here to say. What I loved about your art, you gave each piece fantastic titles.
Yes.
Oh,
well, because
what are they?
Yeah.
Well, like the one about the recovery from sex addiction. One ex-client of mine who had, that I formerly worked with, who'd gone through sex addiction recovery. But she said her strongest memory of when she was in the grip of her sexual acting out, of just hands all over her. I wish I had that painting behind me because people said it was quite striking. It almost looked like raw meat. And it was kind of a female form with hands kind of all over her. So yeah, people found some of them quite dramatic. I do a lot of soothing paintings too.
It was the titles, and I love the titles. I was going, look at that. I was a kid in the sweet shop.
Speaking of soothing titles, the soothing paintings rather, might I suggest as well that sort of the whole your raison d'etre is obviously about sort of helping people to how can I put it? Get a grip on themselves, perhaps, if that's not the wrong way of putting it. You know what I mean?
That sounds more like my late night show.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was probably very right wording for you, but you know what I mean. It's all about helping people to help themselves. So I'll stop it now. I'm just digging a hole. Anyway, the point is that is painting your therapy.
Yes, it is. It's where I totally forget everything when I'm painting. I literally do. And because my painting comes from when I have like a really intense conversation with a client or a friend or family member, I've got almost synesthesia. I've never been diagnosed with it, but I do kind of see
what is
colors.
That? I'm really sorry. I don't know what that. I genuinely don't know what that means. What is synesthesia?
Synesthesia is where some people have their different senses connected. So when they taste, they might see colors.
Wow.
And when I hear and when I look at people talking and getting emotional, colors come to me. So yeah, I mean, taking the colors that people have given me is how I then paint, and I kind of forget all my life's worries and stresses. It's just about getting these images out. So yeah, it's my therapy.
Love it.
We all need therapy.
Here's mine.
Oh wow, yes.
That's my therapy.
I've never seen you play drums, but
very few people have, because I try and keep it quite private. But
you're one of those children.
I just get
I was going to say, you're one of those children where your parents went, "Oh my gosh, he wants to take up the drums."
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. I ruined all of my mum's Tupperware. I started with chopsticks and all her Tupperware, and I destroyed all the Tupperware. And eventually they said, "Jesus, let's just buy him a drum kit."
Yes.
And I got a drum kit. And I was like 14, and I just absolutely loved it. Kept it forever.
And was Phil Collins your idol?
Oh God, no! He's very odd. He's actually one of the least of my idols. Buddy Rich, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, and some of the great drummers.
Ginger Baker.
Oh yes, a magnificent drummer and the most terrifying man on the planet he was. But Ginger Baker, fantastic, brilliant drummer. Now then, we have very exciting news regarding Dr. Pam Spur, which we're going to let Dr. Pam Spur explain.
Well, you and I were talking about, why don't I do a show? And so we came up with this trending with Dr. Pam. So when it's my show time, I'll be looking at the trends that are going on social media and spinning them into our own lives. So like today, Dominic West was trending for having said on GMB that he jumped for joy that Trump had COVID. And you would spin from that. How many people have told me in coaching sessions, I put my foot in it. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to upset someone so much. I said something that I regret, or I don't regret it, but wow, did it have a comeback for me? So we're going to take these things, and like Trump and Melania are trending, and people are saying, well, they won't be quarantining together because they probably don't share a bedroom. So then we will look at that, the headline of the famous people are trending, and say, well, what about us? So are you in a relationship where you're no longer sharing bedrooms? Would you not quarantine together? So we're really going to take new things out of the day that are trending, but bring it back to us and I'm going to talk about it with celebrity guests and expert guests, and just really use what's happening and what everyone's talking about, but to bring it back to what it means to us, those sorts of trending headlines.
I was so excited when we were chatting away, and then you said, "This is my idea."
Easily.
And I do get excited. Well, I get it. I'm enthusiastic. I think if you can't be enthusiastic, you're in the wrong job. If I sat here, go, "Oh, hi, Pam," who the hell wants to watch that? Well, I am enthusiastic. I'm passionate about what I do, right? And when you said this, I thought, oh, I bloody love that. That is great, because it encapsulates the whole thing of the psychology of what's going on in social media without just talking about social media, which we could do forever, and also
Yes.
bringing it back to a much more human, basic level. And that's why, for me, it just resonated so strongly.
Well, I'm
You-
so glad that you feel that way because, of
No, I
course,
do.
men's and women's radio stations, you know, the well-being and mental health issues are paramount. And so it's a way into looking at sometimes more interesting angles, you know, of how we can discuss relationships, mental health, well-being, our sex lives, whatever. But through the medium of what everybody's talking about. And that's why it's trending, because everybody's tweeting and whatever about these topics.
It is sometimes, you know, I do Twitter, I do Facebook because I quite enjoy it, but Twitter is, I try and promote the station as much as I can, etc., and have a bit of a laugh. But it sometimes you come out of it, Pam, and you think, I just need a shower. It just feels like I've swum through a toxic waste pit. It's horrible, horrible.
And I feel like I need to scrub myself, you know, sometimes.
Yes.
Especially when, say, someone I'm following is having a big Twitter row with someone else. And when it gets personal, I don't mind people disagreeing. I disagree with people on Twitter. But what I do mind is when people start using base insults and bad language and someone's physical attributes to have a go at them. Like saying, oh, well, you know, you're just a big fatty and, you know, you eat too many donuts or something, you know, but they're arguing a political point. To me, I hate it when people go, because it's the lowest form of playground bullying.
Yeah.
If you have a different disagreement with someone, but you criticize their appearance, then that is just so low. It reflects on you, not them. You know,
Couldn't agree more. Honestly, it drives me absolutely crackers when the best people can do when it comes to forming some sort of quote coherent argument is to pander to people's weakness, or not even pander to people's weaknesses, actually sort of pick on people's weaknesses.
Exactly.
It's just foul. It's not clever. It's not intelligent. It doesn't make me win it doesn't win me over at all. In fact, on the contrary, I can't count the number of people I've already seen on social media today saying how delighted they are that the president's got COVID. They're loathsome. What is wrong with these people? Seriously, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Trump. Okay, I'm not the biggest fan of Biden either, but I certainly want to see either of them get ill.
No, I can't bear Trump, but yeah, I don't wish COVID on anyone, having had it myself. So, yeah.
No, you did. Am I allowed to ask you about that? Or do you want to?
You are.
Oh, okay. No, because people say, you know, you always see on social media, to bring it right back to you, they say, oh, do you know anybody who's ever got COVID? Do you know anyone? And I'm going, well, yeah, Dr. Pam Spur.
Yeah. I had
plus
it.
Other people did it, plus Linda Lusardi, plus Sam Kane, plus a whole load of other people. But tell us what happened, because this is firsthand.
It's funny enough, it was like 2.5 weeks after my exhibition. So not sure. We haven't identified where the family got it. There were 5 of us in lockdown together of the family, and we all got it. 2 of us, me as one of those, I as one of those, got ill first. It was March 19th. And I started to think, this is a really bad cold. And because I'm mildly asthmatic, my asthma suddenly got really bad. And I never struggled with my asthma. So bad that my daughter-in-law, who's a GP and was locked down with us because she and my son were rebuilding their home at the time and had moved in with us for a period of months. She said, oh, Pam, you've got to get your prednisolone. You've got to get you've got to triple everything you're doing. I just felt like quicksand was in my chest. So then 2 other members of the family fell, 2 days after me, and then the next 2. So it's like I came down with it first, although we don't think I got it. We think we know the source. I'm not going to talk about that, but we think we know where it came from, picking back through everything. But yeah, it was nasty, and we were all ill for like 3 weeks.
How did you tell? Silly question, but I think I asked you when I met you recently. But how? Because people are fascinated by this. How could you tell? Oh, I haven't really got just a lousy cold.
I had, and some of the family had piercing headaches, the horrible dry cough, which no cough syrup would touch, the fever, nausea, what a lot of people don't talk about with COVID, a lot of people, you feel nauseous and yet you're not getting sick. So you're like constantly queasy, flushed. I looked like I was in a zombie film. I woke up on the third day with flushed cheeks and red eyes like a monster. And it turns out that COVID affects all your little blood vessels. And for me, it just flushed them with blood.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was just deeply unpleasant. Then my husband and my daughter-in-law both had to get tested. My husband, because he was so ill, and my daughter-in-law, because she's a GP, and she had a very mild case, but she still tested positive. So when the tests came back positive for those two, the tester said, you can assume the other three in the family who are all ill with the same symptoms have it.
Right,
So,
right. Were you, did you feel frightened?
I was a little bit terrified because my asthma is usually so well controlled. I'm a runner. I swim. I do yoga. I don't really have a problem with it. It's just very mild, and I always carry my inhaler with me.
Right.
So it was scary. It was really, because people were dying. You know, by the time when I was really most ill around the 21st of March, people had already been dying in Italy and France and Spain. And, you know, it was a bit terrifying, but, you know, I got through it.
You see,
Probably because I had all those steroids. I took so many steroids because my daughter-in-law told me to. But you cannot do that without a doctor. So let's just clarify that. You know, anybody
don't rush off and just get some
the
steroids.
doctor has to tell you what to take.
You see, this is what drives me absolutely apoplectic when people say, well, there's no such thing as COVID. Why do they do this? You can't just it's like,
Russ, who have you known who's actually said that? Unless do you know them personally, or are you talking about on social media?
Both.
Wow.
Well, I don't know anybody personally, but on social media, I've seen it.
Certainly on social media.
Well, there's a certain personality type that will say these things and buy into conspiracy theories, like it's a conspiracy to make us all live a new life in an authoritarian society.
Yes.
You know, but there's a certain personality type that tends to buy into that. So thankfully, most people do acknowledge it's real, even if they feel the lockdown's been too extreme, which I know a number of people who feel that way, who feel the measures have left other people behind, that the NHS has become the COVID NHS.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a truth
that's why people
in that.
Yes. Certainly for cancer treatments and heart treatments and things like that, I think people are angry and just, I'm going to put my neck on the block and just say justifiably, because cancer is so time critical.
Absolutely.
It doesn't wait. It doesn't say, "Oh, okay, I understand. There's a problem. There's a bit of a lull. I'll cool it off." No, it doesn't care.
Yeah.
You know, it just keeps doing what it's doing. So I think people are justifiably very upset. But there are people, Phil, who just say, "Okay, but there's no such thing." I'm not talking about the lockdown. They just think it's just made up.
Things like that. But what I do honestly think there are an argument that has some legs is whether or not what we've done in terms of a reaction to this is actually worse than what would have happened if it was allowed to run rampant. I know we'll never know the answer to that, but I believe there's an argument to be had there. But look, there are many people. One thing that we've absolutely learned through this and also through Brexit and anything else recently is there are a great number of people who think that A, they know better than the government, and B, that they are psychic, which I find amazing. If only I haven't found one of those people who's psychic enough to tell me what the lottery numbers are. So, you know, they're obviously not that good at predicting the future.
It grows. See, Pam,
interesting. I was going to say interesting point Phil was making, but the stats show that if we'd locked down 2 weeks earlier, we would have had significantly fewer deaths. So there's something about locking down early that we missed out on, and maybe we could have come out sooner.
And close the airports might have been a good thing as well.
Yes.
Why was that about?
People just flood in with no checks. It's ridiculous.
I never understood.
So many mistakes made.
It should have been that as soon as there was a snifter of this, we are in such a brilliant position in the fact that we are an island. Okay,
we are an island.
If there's any doubt whatsoever about this particular disease, which there clearly was way back in October, November, close the blooming airports. Bang, sorted.
End of. Right.
Exactly
I'm going to go back to your core. I'm going to go back to one of your core strengths, Pam.
Oh, my core strength. You mean
Ed
my
Grossman?
pelvic floor?
I
worked that out really hard.
I'm only made of flesh and blood, Pam. Take it easy. Ed Grossman says this, Dr. Pam, And is sex addiction and nymphomania the same thing?
Well, I think nymphomania is the old term that people used for, sexual acting out, and what's been come to known as sex addiction. Now, the thing is, it's not internationally recognized yet that there is sex addiction, although many experts in the area do recognize it. It just hasn't made the official, diagnostic manual requirements yet. So what I like to look at with people is sex addiction is inappropriate sexual behavior that damages yourself, damages your relationship, that you spend too much money on. If you, like, say, specialist pay-per-view, you get addicted to certain types of porn where you pay for it. It disrupts your work, as I say, your relationships. Like any addiction, anybody who has an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction or a gambling addiction, a sex addiction interrupts the normal flow of your life. Secrets become larger because you become more secretive. The more guilty you feel, the more it drives you into that cycle of self-medicating that guilt, and in this case, through sexual encounters. So it has all the strands of an addiction. But as I say, not everyone agrees to its exact how it should be characterized.
So it's interesting because I think Ed he did want to know that, because you were saying about one of your previous patients, hence your painting, which looked like
the sex addiction.
Yeah, I mean that's what, because it's an interesting phrase. It is a modern phrase, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is a modern phrase. When is your new show starting? I should know this.
It's starting on the women's station Friday, October 16th at 4 p.m.
The day after my birthday. We're gonna absolutely just pile it, and we're just so excited. And I know how busy you are today, so it's I said to various, I said, Pam Spurs, Dr. Pam Spurs joining us. They all went, nah. I went, no, she really,
no, I'm not working with her.
Because you're hugely popular. You got a big following, and it's absolutely great. Now, quickly, just coming back to the COVID thing, is everybody in the family, how are they feeling now?
Yeah, no, they're all fine now. And the two people who really lost their sense of taste and smell, that is such a big thing. Mine was heightened. A piece of broccoli tastes like I was eating a forest.
Wow.
I mean, honestly, I had such heightened sensory, the way it affected my olfactory system, which is your smell, sense of smell. The two who lost it completely, it's taken months, and they've now gradually got it back. But thankfully, none of us were left with significant, problems. I think my chest is a little worse, but I can deal with that.
Okay. Well, for the asthma and everything.
Yeah, I think I'm now not like the totally mild asthmatic I once was. I think I probably have a bit more of a problem.
But this is the other thing, and just very, very briefly, because everyone said, "Oh, it's COVID and better," but they won't talk about long COVID and the aftermath of the I'm not talking about the economic effects, which are a nightmare. The physical effects, the medical effects.
Yeah, no, there is now this long COVID group on Facebook, which has about 20,000 members.
Jeez.
In America, they call it long haul COVID. People with significant changes to different parts of their, medical, physical health, heart, kidney, stomach, chest and lungs, the brain fog. My gosh, it took weeks for all of us to shake that off. The brain fog was horrible. Oh yeah, terrible brain fog.
Do you know what? I'm absolutely convinced that both my sister, because long story short, to anyone who knows, back in March, I moved in with my sister and brother-in-law because we were trying to protect our parents to make sure that they didn't catch anything, because at the time I was still going to have to go into work. And then the irony, I found out that weekend that I didn't have to go into work, but I'd already moved in with them. And by that time, my sister had started displaying symptoms. So it was too late to come back home again. Anyway, it was just the most appalling timing. Literally one day later, and I would have been able to stay at home throughout the lot. It's the most bizarre thing. But anyway, the point is that when we both, there's no doubt in my mind, both had it. My sister had all of the symptoms, including loss of taste, loss of smell. Me, it was more about the cough. Me, it was more about the cough and the fever. I knew that I had fluctuating fever. One minute I'd be boiling hot, the next I'd be shivering. But the rest of the time, it was just this hacking cough. 5 weeks of hacking cough. It was unreal. But the probably the most telling bit is when I actually, curiously enough, I actually lost my voice as part of it as well. To Russ's delight, to Russ's absolute delight, he even had to put in a substitute once in a while because I couldn't work on the program. But anyway.
Phil, you weakling. A little cough, a little wrecking cough stopped you from working on the program.
Yeah, who would have thought?
What's wrong? But what's really interesting, though, is that when you say about the brain fog, I never realized this was even a thing. And I still believe, honestly, good few, I mean, this has got to be what 5 months later after I think I had it, 5 months later, I still get foggy moments where I can't formulate sentences. Yeah. I think to myself, oh, what was I saying?
Welcome to my world.
It's classic, Phil. You definitely had it. Have you got your antibodies tested to see? Because I got my antibody test about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I was still positive for antibodies.
Really? Wow. Okay, no, I haven't had that. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, the antibodies, I know it sounds a bit sort of blasé. I'm not that fussed by that. Yeah. It's more I was worried about whether or not I actively had it, where it was going to pose a risk to some of my family. That was what I was more concerned about. Antibodies, they've not really, from what I understand, perfected that particular test anyway.
No, they haven't. I did have the most reliable one, supposedly, the Abbott long test, not the quick test, but where you give the full vial of blood. I did it for curiosity. It wasn't going to change my behavior because they say you may not be safe even with some antibodies in you, that you produce some antibodies. So I certainly am not nonchalant about it, and I do wear my mask in public and social distance. But no, I was just curious. I'm always curious.
Pat, thank you so much for joining. I know you've got a packed day today and you've got to go off and do lots of grown-up stuff. Anyway, we look forward to welcoming you on Women's Radio Station, and we're going to bring it on to Men's Radio Station as well.
Thank you.
Bless you. Fabulous. Fabulous.
And Dr. Pam, might I say as well that unfortunately these COVID times mean that we can't do anything in front of a live audience, but I'm perfectly confident of the news of you getting your own show on Women's Radio. If they were here, they'd be doing this right now.
I don't know about that. What's up, guys?
Bye, Dr. Pam.
Big kisses.
Bye-bye.
There we go.
There you go.
She's great.
How much class can we have to this show already? Seriously.
How much class? Now, here's a load of things, right? Now, this is interesting. This is from Kane Janor.
I saw this one.
I saw this and I thought, I'm not bringing this up. Well, Dr. Pam's with us. I've been a fan of her for years. I'm just thrilled. Then we became sort of pals. Kane Janor says this, and I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to comment in the middle of it, and then we can. Have we got time? Yeah, we've got a bit of time.
Yeah, loads of time.
The more I listen to the daily, the reason Pam had to go is I think she's rushing off to do TV now. So there we are. The more, this is Kane Janor. Now, just a bit of background with him. He was a top Fleet Street journalist and a massive career, was very influential. The more I listen to the Daily Show, the more I ask myself the question, what the hell is wrong with me? I have had all the usual ups and downs of being alive, stretching from orgasmic happiness, too much detail there, fella, to extreme anger. But I've never, ever felt depressed, clinical or manic. Why? Am I abnormal? I listen to all the desperate tales of woe and hear constant references to mental health in the media, but I can't get a handle on what is happening to people. I'm as worried as anyone else about that's as far as I've got. What's the rest of it?
Constant treatment, the constant threat of COVID. But I can't live my life in a cupboard. So I just try to get on with it. Obviously, my attitude must be lacking in empathy and much else. And you know what it is, Ken, is that I think forgive me, I believe, in my opinion, the answer is that nowadays, in particular, sort of a couple of generations worth, and I think I was even having a conversation with a colleague this morning about this very subject. I was saying about how I think I've managed to narrowly escape this. We've bred about 2 generations who are encouraged amongst everything else and above everything else to think with their hearts rather than think with their heads, and I believe that although being more emotionally aware is a good thing, because let's be honest, we were all very stiff upper lip for many, many decades, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing. However, being more stiff upper lip and thinking more practically when it comes to whatever life throws at you gives you much more ability to be able to deal with whatever life throws at you. The problem with being too emotional is that it gives you much more vulnerability. It sort of will present you as someone who can't necessarily cope, when actually there are more often than not far worse things. Okay, for heaven's sakes, you know more than most how awful life can be sometimes, dreadful life can be sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think until someone has either A, had that experience, and I'm not talking about the experience you went through per se, but what experiences you've been through per se. I mean, an experience that makes people realize that it could always be so much worse than it is.
Sure.
And until people are brought up to recognize that actually you've got to be thankful for what you've got and thankful for the situation you're in, rather than ungrateful for the situation you're in and ungrateful for what you've got. This is going, there's no doubt in my mind, is going to keep happening. I'm so sick of being surrounded by people who believe woe is them and that their life is about as low as it can get. They haven't got a clue.
We need to be very, very careful with where you're going.
No,
because let's just be very clear, unless I've and I haven't misunderstood what you're saying.
To be perfectly clear, I'm not referring to people, make no mistake, I'm not referring to people who have genuine mental health issues, who have general
That's my point.
Fine. Genuine medical needs surrounding mental health. Believe me, I'm with you. And believe me, I don't think there's anywhere near enough support out there. However, I believe one thing that fuels that, and I'm not saying causes it, fuels it, is the notion of how we are either brought up or how we are almost allowed to, like I said, I think it's a case of being allowed to think with one's heart rather than think with one's head. The bottom line is, and this is something that I think has been a real wake-up call for most people when it comes to the COVID situation. Nobody, but nobody, has the right to live forever. It's a ghastly, awful fact. But how many times do we hear there's only one certainty in life? We know what that certainty is.
Well, two, death and tax.
But we know what that certainty is. And my point is that we are not brave enough. We're not brave enough to actually say, do you know what? I'm going to live for today because I never know if I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Well, it's not a promise, is it?
It's not a promise at all.
It's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed. I just want to re-emphasize one point, because I don't want, a load of splashback coming on Phil for this. Be very clear. He is not in any way denigrating the whole area of mental health. There is not enough done for it. That's why we're on air 24/7, both on men's radio and women's radio. It's about mental health. It's about having the conversation. It's about making sure you don't feel alone. It's people who just moan. That's an entirely different scenario.
Yeah,
that's an entirely different scenario.
Let me make this very, very clear, because I don't want any come back on you either, RK, because that's not fair or right. Okay, I apologize if what I've just said has come across as me denigrating or me dismissing anyone with genuine mental health needs. That's not what I'm getting at all. Promise you, not getting at all. No. But what I am getting at is how it would appear, and I know you hate the word, Russ, but society at large is encouraged to not think practically and think far more about themselves, not the bigger picture, and think far more about how emotionally something impacts them rather than thinking logically how something will impact them. Emotions are ghastly, but they can be.
They're the human condition. Otherwise, you're an AI. Otherwise you're a robot. You don't have emotions.
There's no doubt about it.
You're a sociopath, or you're a psychopath. Well, if you don't have emotions, that's the definition of a sociopath and a psychopath.
But might I suggest that if you think along the lines of a real trivial level here, okay, let's look at the emotion again, not just for clarity. Neither Russ or I are medical experts. Okay, this is purely opinion. So please don't take my word too much at heart.
I think they've probably grasped that by now.
I'm sure they have, but I would like to reassure. I just wanted to reiterate it. But the point is, if you look at a real trivial level, okay, look at when we're in a situation where we're either tempted to laugh or cry at something.
Mhm.
More often than not, if people know that something's inappropriate, they might snigger, they might choke, but they can control that because that's a control over an emotion, right? Emotions can be controlled when they need to be. But I believe that for far too long, people have been told they actually don't need to control their emotions. All right, actually, another example, RK as well, is look at a lack of discipline in schools. For how many years? How much we might have hated discipline, how much we might have hated rulers or anything like that being used to wallop us on the hands or what have you. What that ever did is it showed you don't do something because there are nasty consequences. If you don't demonstrate that there are consequences to an action, those actions are going to be repeated. It's not rocket science. An idiot like me knows this. So for God's sake, surely the professionals know it.
Well, it's a very interesting area. Ken Elmgen will come back because it was his comment which sparked this. Exactly right, Phil. My lip is still stiff along with other body parts. Like your shoulders, Ken Elm. Like your shoulders, a bit stiff in your shoulders. And long may that last. Sandra Butler, she's very wise, Sandra. Sandra and I to exchange little messages most days. Most interesting woman, been through so much and come through the other side of it. Prepare for the worst, expect the best. Totally. Oh man, I'm totally with that. Prepare for the worst, expect the best.
But Sandra, am I allowed to not alter that, but suggest a slight alternative, just a slight twist on what you say there? Rather than prepare for the worst, couldn't it be deal with the worst when it happens, but aim for the best? So rather than prepare...
No. Because, and I'll tell you why I think you're wrong. Because if you go into any situation, the smart thing to do is say, right, what is the worst case scenario that's going to happen with this situation? What's the absolute worst? Look at it, examine it, think how that will impact on you, and then you can make a rational decision when to go ahead. Every time I haven't done that, it's been a freaking disaster, I'm going to tell you. Right, so you think, well, what is the worst? And then you aim for the very, very best because you've looked at what the very worst could be. I think that's only sensible. That's not a pessimistic view. It's a realistic view with any situation.
Not if
whatever you're doing.
Yeah, but hang on. Not if you let it consume your life.
No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is it's unrealistic to just plow ahead in a sort of cavalier manner and not think, well, I'm going to go into this. And you're going to think, like, what's the worst that could happen? That's how you should think of if you think of a business, let's take it away from emotion, put it into business for a second, which business becomes very emotional, as we know. Let's say you were starting a new radio station. You say, all right, what's the very worst? Who would do that? What's the very worst that could happen? You'd look at the financial exposure. You could look like an idiot. All sorts of things. All right, I'm willing to take that risk. Now let's move forward. Take it with your bread. I mean, let's bring it right down. And I'm not being facetious. Your bread baking, which you really enjoy and you like and you look forward to on a Friday. What's the worst? The bread tastes crap and you throw it away. Okay. What's the best? I'm going to have something fabulous, which I really enjoy. You can bring it down to the most minute level of baking a loaf of bread or take it up to wherever you want. You can take it up to a relationship. Should I be with this person? What's the worst that's going to happen? I'll get my heart broken or something like that. Okay. I'll take the chance because I think this person's worth it. Whatever.
Fine, but
that's what.
All right, but let's use the bread analogy. You don't really think I go in making bread thinking to myself, the worst that could happen is this could be a disaster. If it's a disaster, then I deal with it. Because otherwise, all I'm doing is I'm feeding myself negative thoughts.
No. I don't go. I think it's an attitude of mine. I think, what I'd say, and I go back to Ken Elm's point, is that one of the most important things that I've ever learned, and I don't give usually ever personal advice because that's not the point of the show. It's like, if you start to go down the route of why me, you will go mad. Because the question you should ask, and I've said this before, is not, oh, why me? It's like, why not you? Because life is a random lottery. And if you look for meaning in everything, if you look for portents and signs, and this, there's a it's not. It's a random lottery. You know, it is what it is. And you once you accept that, life becomes much, much easier. There's no point in dwelling on why did this happen to me? It just did. You know, deal with it.
Sandra's come back on my point that I was saying when she said prepare for the worst, expect the best. And I said, would I be allowed to tweak it slightly and say rather than prepare for the worst, you would say deal with the worst when it comes, but aim for the best. But Sandra's come back saying, and quite rightly, there's no argument to this, that is something that her grandparents used in life and they went through 2 world wars.
That's it.
No argument from me. If that worked for them, then great. But I would just sort of say, I think that what I'm more doing is saying what my attitude is rather than preparing for worse, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if the worst happened, but I don't think along the lines of the worst until it happens.
See, Andrew's come back. Andrea Lucas, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, an amazing book. Andrea, I'll be honest, I don't need to read the book. It just does. It happens to anybody.
Now,
it's just random. It's random stuff.
Speaking of bad things happening to good people, we've nabbed her for another half an hour of her amazing and very busy time, waiting in the wings in the digital.
Whoa. What do you mean? Thinking of what you mean to say, turn it round. What you mean to say, talking of fantastic things happen to 2 bad people. That makes sense.
He can talk for himself. Anyway, right. Further ado, there is none. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Make me laugh. I have no idea.
Probably out of nerves, to be honest.
Probably out of just pure frustration. I just want to smack my fist through the.
It's fine. Anyway, not that we can. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the screen to Men's Radio on a Friday afternoon with Russ. The sensational Chantal Rickards. Chantal, good afternoon.
Hello. How are you?
You're here.
We're good. We're good. How are you?
I have to say, you sound slightly cranky, you boys, this afternoon. Margaret Thatcher used to suffer from something called prime ministerial tension. I think you boys are suffering from radio presenters tension this afternoon.
No, I have to tell you, I think that we've just come as ever close as we have been to a digital fisticuffs.
Do you know what it is? It's only these little things, like tiny matters, like how you go through life. What is my personal mantra? No, says Phil, you're talking crap. No, I think I know what my personal mantra is by now.
All the usual things that you would find on ITVB. Anyway, right. That you are here for it.
You've changed your hair. Am I allowed to say this these days? I don't know.
I haven't put it back behind my ears.
There we go. I honestly don't know, Chantal, what anyone is allowed to say. I was looking off. I was pretending there was anybody else there. There's a kitchen. I don't think my kettle has an opinion on this one way or the other. There we go.
You've had some very steamy discussions with that kettle.
Right, Chantal, thank you so much for joining us. I always say that.
Enormous pleasure.
We really appreciate it. We never, ever take it for granted. Oh, here we go. I haven't even started.
No, but hang on. It could only mean...
Hang on, here we go. Has to be done, Chantal. I'm sorry.
Okay, here we go.
It's time for this. Oh yes, it's time to talk all things.
The only person who gets their own theme tune.
Oh, I'm very privileged. Thank you.
I don't know. Nobody else gets it.
Can we rephrase that slightly? The only person we've nicked a theme tune for.
Yeah, all right. Okay, that's true. Right, I'm going to kick off straight away. We've got people immediately you turn up, boom, the screen lights up.
Oh.
Linda Dave, don't know her. Please ask Chantal if she's seen A Place to Call Home.
A Place to Call Home. Have
I seen
it?
First answer. Must take your first answer. We're going for that holiday in
Well,
Barbados.
the first answer is it's familiar, and I can't remember what show it
I'm
is.
so sorry. We're going to have to put it to the other team.
Yes,
right.
do. Ask Phil. Phil's seen everything.
Well, A Place to Call Home is actually an Australian series that's on
Yes.
it's on Amazon Prime. That's
No,
where
in that case, I haven't seen it.
it's currently streaming on Amazon Prime. There's actually, I didn't realize this. There have been a total of 6 series so far.
Wow.
But what is it? Is it like How to Build a House? Or...
Oh, I see. It's from what I understand, because I, funnily enough, I haven't watched it, despite it sort of being on in
Australian soap, says Andrea Lucas.
What is it? Sorry,
An Australian soap.
Yeah, it's less.
No.
I think it's less soap. It's more Australian drama. If I'm being a pedant, because I think they do. I think they do series rather than continual series. If you see what I mean. But I believe it's set. Isn't it sort of just? I think it's set just after the World War II.
Oh, I know which series it is. I think I watched one episode about 6 months ago to check it out. And actually, it has done 6 series because it's been rather successful. It's not something that I really know about, so I'm probably not the best person to talk to about it. But thank you, Linda. I will look it up. I'll go back to it and try it again.
Question number 2 from Ed Grossman.
Nice.
Chantal,
Folks,
hello. Ed Grossman. Chantal, hello and happy Friday. We need to consider Gone Fishing. It's about men's health and mental health. Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer, isn't it? Deal with many issues. It's important for this show. I've not seen it, but it looked. I've seen a little trailer for it. It looked charming.
Yes, well, that slightly follows on from us talking about all the fishing programs last week. So we need to go back to that. It's again, I think it's something that I don't know about yet, but thank you, Ed. I will look it up and I'll report back next week.
It's interesting watching 2 people that you've admired. I don't mean you and Phil. I meant Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse, and just being kind of just themselves. They're looking older. Life is. I don't mean it's any rude way. I mean, I can talk, but it's kind of like. And they're growing into who they're they're becoming, and the issues that we have. It's interesting stuff. Like that.
It's rather like it sounds a bit like Road Trip, the Steve Coogan and.
Yeah. Oh God! Oh Welsh, Rob.
Welsh, exactly.
Rob.
Rob.
Embarrassing.
I know.
How embarrassing is that? No.
But that's rather good, actually.
I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, definitely worth watching Road Trip if you haven't seen it. I think there are about 3 series of that now. It's good fun.
It is quite, but it's kind of scripted because Steve Coogan then is kind of playing a different version of himself, isn't he? Really, when he gets caught by the
but I think it's more like the real him, actually, because I think there's a bit of the real person behind nearly every character that they portray. So I think there's quite a lot of Coogan in that. Bryden, exactly.
Oh, thank goodness! I thought
that's the one. Well done.
COVID there for a minute. COVID fog. Yes, it's very. There's some great the bits when they're just eating and doing impressions. it's absolutely priceless. Your fabulous recommendation of Schitt's Creek. Andrew Lucas is still watching it. People are absolutely loving it.
Good. I'm glad. It is funny, even if you don't like it, Russ. One day you'll find your.
I didn't like it. I didn't say. I said I haven't watched it. I didn't say I didn't like it. I didn't say I didn't.
Oh no,
like
I think it was Phil who was a bit of a dissenter.
I was the one who wasn't really the biggest fan of a certain creek. So
yes, indeed.
I know I'm in the minority. I'm not being funny. People love it, so I'm obviously doing something. But it's just not my thing.
Necessarily. I mean, Fleabag. I lasted 15 minutes, and I thought this is not for me, and I never went back. Everyone else thought it was the greatest thing since sliced. So. It's horses for courses. E. Phantom has said Gone Fishing is a lovely watch.
Ah, good. We like that. We like a lovely watch.
We do. We're doing these. I've got a question for you, Chantal. And I wonder if other people are doing this quite randomly. Night before last, quite random. I'm on YouTube on the TV, and I like to do that. I like watching documentaries and stuff like that. They just fascinate me. And I came across a YouTube channel.
Yep.
And it was about really what they call overlanding in the United States. And there's just a bunch of guys, and they get into their Jeeps, which are all kitted up and raised up, and I won't bore you with the technical details, and they go on the most magnificent journeys. It's not a proper program. It's just a guy showing, and we went through here. I got totally captivated by it.
Oh, really?
Totally. I felt I'd been on holiday.
Oh, well, it sounds wonderful. It
views
sounds authentic, if nothing else, which, you know, is
completely
always
authentic. It's not one of these reality TV shows. These are men and women. They get in their jeeps and they just go on what they call these trails across
Yeah.
America. And I honestly, I became bewitched by it, and I could almost smell the fresh air and the sea and the ocean, and I just thought, this is just great. If you want to check it out, what the hell is it called? It's called Trail Recon. It's not for everybody, but I'd never seen these places. It's places that I'd always want to see. You won't see in a travel program.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was both charming and interesting, and I loved the guy's enthusiasm. So that was it's called Trail Recon. That's the channel.
Interesting.
It was, and also because it's all about jeeps and tech, and I really liked that. That was a bit Boise, but the views and the cooking, it was really it took me out of myself, and I guess that's what we want from television.
It sounds brilliant. I've got quite a lot of blokey stuff to talk about this week because this is a bloke channel at the end of the day, and I was going to start with something that you may have discussed.
We could rebrand the Blokes channel. Perfect.
I wish I'd have thought of that. Go on.
I think when I was at UK TV, we were trying to think of a new name for the channel Dave, which actually came out of another channel that was already pre-existing at UK TV. And I think the Blokes channel was the idea that I
came up with Dave. How did they come up with Dave?
Very, very
genius.
It was genius. It was absolutely genius. We were throwing around loads and loads of ideas, but we knew we wanted a Blokes channel. And actually, Dave it's the guy at the bar. It's not David. It's just somebody
Dave.
you know. It's a friend. I mean, it was a very, very clever idea.
Chantal said friend Phil Dave.
I'm just
someone I tolerate 3 times a week. Anyway, it's just genius calling a channel Dave. It's so brave and so clever. The same time.
And the catch-up channel was called Dave Javu, which I always thought was
I love
that.
Just fabulous. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Anyway, no, to go back to something blokey, but as serious, but a topic that you may have already discussed this week, and in which case all I will add to it is to say that this is a programme worth watching. And it's the programme about Freddie Flintoff called Living with Bulimia, which I think should have been called Sticks and Stones, because it quite clearly, he suggests that the reason his bulimia was kicked off was because he saw himself absolutely ripped to shreds in the sun when they called him the fat lad from Lancashire or something similar, and published lots of horrible photographs of him having put on a bit of poundage. And that was what actually kicked him into feeling utterly, utterly miserable about his weight. He's still got an eating disorder. Bulimia, 25% of all people who are bulimic are men. Men don't talk about it as often. Only, I think, 60% of men who are bulimics don't ever seek treatment for it. And clearly there is lots of treatment out there. But coming forward and owning up to it as a 42-year-old, lad from Lancashire and saying, I've had this issue for 20 years, I think is incredibly brave. It was rather like the documentary that Rio Ferdinand did in 2017 about the grief that he was experiencing when his wife died. And actually, it does feel authentic. It doesn't feel like a television construct, because actually, if they're well made, these documentaries, they're really hard hitting. And I think it's well worth everybody watching it. Whether you have an eating disorder or not, that's completely irrelevant. It's a beautifully made documentary. And at the end of it, your heart can only go out to him.
You see, I'd like to ask you a question, if I can. It slightly broadens the conversation. But, there would be people saying, and I'm not one of them, let me be clear, that, oh, God, another celebrity moaning about something. And that I find, how do you feel when someone comes up with that?
Well, I can see why people would say that, because as a former commissioner of TV programs and a producer of TV programs, you want to get the story out to as many people as possible. And using celebrities to do it is a sort of shorthand way of getting as many bums on seats and as many eyeballs as possible, because the name Freddie Flintoff is going to bring in a load of people. It's going to bring in the people who, you know, loved his sporting career, or who loved what he does on Top Gear, or on A League of Their Own. You know, he's got a lot of fans, and it is a very quick way of getting a lot of people to come to a subject that might be otherwise difficult. So I think if it had just been an 8 o'clock documentary on a Wednesday night called My Life with Bulimia, the audience would have been yay size, tiny. So I don't think it's about celebrities, you know, laying themselves out there for greater plaudits in some way. I think it's an incredibly brave thing to do. He never had to tell that story to anybody.
Yes,
Clearly, he probably wouldn't have made any money out of telling it. So there was a different reason to tell that story, and I think it's a very personal issue, and I'm glad that he did it. And I don't think it's cheating, the fact that that story was brought to us by a TV personality or a sports personality.
I think it's a proper fit. I think it's a proper fit, and it's something which needs to be got out there. It's the same, you know, it's the same thing as Denise. People criticizing Denise Welch for, you know, writing books about her. Oh, what's she going on about now? No, I thought it was, loads of people found it incredibly helpful. And if you feel, and the whole thing about the radio and these things is, if you don't feel you're alone in this, it gives you even the smallest amount of comfort is better than no comfort at all.
Yeah.
And might I suggest that, seeing as we live in an age where actually choice is key, if it doesn't resonate with you, if you don't like it, don't watch it, don't listen, don't pay.
Exactly.
You've got the that's your choice completely.
It's not like taking out one of the 3 channels that's available. You know, you've got 300 channels plus now. So just move on.
I was at the press conference probably 25 years ago for a charity called Wellbeing.
I don't mean you move on. I mean that those who are complaining should move on.
Indeed. No, but just to go back to where we were, I was at the press conference where Princess Diana announced that she had suffered from bulimia, which at that stage nobody knew. I think vaguely people had talked about it in the press, but she had certainly never talked about it. And you could have literally heard her pin drop. But actually, what it did for letting other people feel as though they weren't alone in that awful world of eating disorders was incredibly powerful. And, you know, my heart went out to her. She didn't need any more celebrity fans. She was the most famous woman in the world. And she came out with that incredibly personal story. So people shouldn't feel alone, basically. That was really the reason for bringing that to your attention this week. But it's a great documentary, and it should be seen.
Thank you for that. That's good. What other blokey stuff? I love the way.
So I went down the blokey route, but I thought, well, if you want 90 minutes of just pure fun, the last film I saw before lockdown that I saw at the Curzon Cinema in London, with the cast and crew who came to talk about it afterwards, was something called The Gentleman. It's Guy Ritchie's latest movie.
Yes.
And it came out in January. I think it was literally the last time I went into the West End before lockdown. And they all came along to talk about it afterwards. And it's a bit lock stock, and it's got an incredible cast of, you know, Hugh Grant, Colin Farrell, Michelle Dockery, Lady Mary from Downton Abbey as a gangster's mole, Matthew McConaughey, Henry Golding. I mean, astonishing cast. And the Matthew McConaughey character is a drug dealer, and it's got some slapstick elements. It's got some, you know, good car chases, but it's a very, very good story. I mean, I think it's Guy Ritchie really at his best, with a great cast. And they just announced, only yesterday, they announced that they're going to turn it into a TV series. So I don't know who the cast are going to be in the TV series, because you'd probably never get all of those people and probably couldn't afford them anyway. But it's really worth watching, and it's currently on Amazon. So I think it's just popped up on Amazon.
I've noticed that just come up, and I was tempted to go and see it, but you know, Guy Ritchie for me is like either really hit or I've tried to watch Snatch about 5 times, and I just cannot get on with it. Some of it I absolutely love. I love Lockstock, and
Lockstock was
and I love the Sherlock Holmes stuff he does. I thought was terrific.
Yeah,
and I also thought very, very underrated was The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It bombed, and I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
You're in a class of your own there, my friend.
I know, but you see, it's like comedy. Fun is funny if you like it. It's funny if you don't like it. It's not funny. I enjoyed it because I'm a Henry Cavill fan. I thought Henry Cavill was great in it.
Yeah, I love Henry Cavill. Yeah,
He's
and
really
he is in the new Bond, not the new the film Enola Holmes.
Yes, I watched that.
You watched that?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, don't tell me what happened over it. I've got it on my watch list.
Okay.
I've got so much on my watch list.
A spaceship lands and then takes them all away. Have you seen Enola Holmes?
I've seen half of it. Started
Oh.
it a couple of nights ago.
And
was watching it as I was cooking in the kitchen, and I will go back to the second half. I mean, it looks good, and Millie Bobby Brown is tremendous. She's the young British actress.
Tell me who she is, because I didn't know who she was. Then I saw her name, and Shirley Green, whom we both know, has been banging on about Millie Bobby Brown for about 2 years, and I have no idea who the heck she is. She was great. Who is she?
So she was represented by Shirley's daughter in Los Angeles, who was their agent. But anyway, that's aside.
That makes perfect sense.
A great series aimed at children called Stranger Things, with I think 5 or 6 lead actors who are all young people, aged between about 10 and 16. And it's all a bit sort of spooky dooky and a bit, perfect for kids, absolutely perfect for kids. And she was the breakout star, really, from Stranger Things. She's risen very, very quickly into adult programming. This is clearly sort of slightly going backwards because it's a film really aimed at a younger audience, but she's very good, and she gets a producer credit on it. And I think she's still only 16 or 17. I mean, she's a young woman from the United Kingdom who's been an absolute breakout star. She's a very good actress.
It's really interesting because I didn't know who the stars were. I recognised Henry Cavill. I didn't know who anybody else was till the end credits, to be honest. I just plunged in and I thought, this kid is great.
Did I mention last week? I can't remember if I had talked about it. I'm so sorry, because to me, 1 week blurs into the next. You must forgive me if I've already brought this up. Did I mention the program I started watching on Netflix called Ratched? Did I tell you about this?
No,
I don't think you mentioned it, but I've seen it. I watched the whole thing from beginning to end.
Oh, now I have.
Yeah. It's a prequel, if you like, to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Nurse Ratched was the famous character in that, and there is every pun intended in her surname being spelt Ratched. So I'll move on from that, because otherwise we'll be back into the other TV show that we were talking about earlier on. And she plays a woman whose brother is a murderer. And it's a very good series. Sarah Paulson is an extremely good actress, American actress. She was the woman who was in the O.J. Simpson case as the trial lawyer. Very tremendous actress, and she plays.
Are we allowed to show off resources? Because I think we might be able to hear a trail.
Oh, okay.
I know. Have a listen to this. I mean, I'm going to see if this works. I hope it does.
Hello. How's our patient today? You've been subjected to so much pain, haven't you? But a disordered mind can't cure itself. That's why tomorrow is a big day for you. You'll finally be free. After we're done, you'll be a completely new person. I promise. Take care now.
May I just say, it's every bit as heart-stopping as it sounds at times. It's
a comedy, is it? Lots of big musical numbers.
Extraordinary. You say that, but there are 1 or 2 moments that you can sort of giggle at. It sounds really silly because it's quite serious, but genuinely, there's 1 or 2 moments that actually are quite amusing. Yeah. I'm laughing out of nerves, though.
If you're feeling fragile, don't watch it. It's gruesome. It's just about on the edge of what I would watch as a woman. I think if it had been any more disturbing, I wouldn't have been able to cope with it and wouldn't have watched it. But actually, it's extremely well done, set in the 1950s, and looks brilliant. Oh, yeah. They've really put money on screen, and you can really tell that their attention to detail has been absolutely fantastic, and the clothes are astonishing. It's a good series. I think it's on. Is it on Sky, Phil? I can't remember.
It's Netflix. So there's Netflix.
Ed Grossman, the answer to your question, what's that show? It's Ratched.
Ratched. And may I suggest that there is rated 18 for a very good reason. So if you have young family members, for heaven's sakes, it's 18 for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a disturbing piece, but extremely good. So yes, we didn't chat about it last week, but anyway, definitely worth watching. The other thing I watched this week, again, it's not really for a fragile mind, but sometimes you just want some good drama. And there was a very good true life story on ITV called Honor, which was about what is described as an honor killing. It's the wrong phraseology, because most people would understand really there is no honor in how this is done. But it's the true story of the detective Caroline Good, who in 2006 went after the killers of a young woman in a so-called honor killing. It's very well done. Keely Hawes can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Great, isn't she?
Tremendous.
She's such a versatile actress.
She
You
is,
don't go.
yeah.
It's like when you see Hugh Grant, you go, oh, apart from the gentleman, you go, oh, it's Hugh Grant playing Hugh Grant. But Keely Hawes is like a completely different person, isn't she?
Yeah. She's good. It's worth watching. I mean, ITV are getting pretty good at doing these real life crimes. It's a genre that's absolutely working for them because they get big numbers. And it's very well made. So it's worth watching if you're interested in the whole subject. It's really about the police screw up, for want of a better word, because this young woman had been to the police 5 times to say that she thought she was in danger. So it's really about the police and how they did the investigation. But it's still a good drama and definitely worth watching.
But I'm so torn for it because I absolutely love Keely Hawes. I think, as you rightly say, can absolutely do no wrong.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, it is a subject that I'm so twitchy about. I know it's highlighting it. I get it. I understand that. But anybody who kills in the name of religion, I just can't even give it oxygen. Because to me, it's such a foreign concept and such a hideous concept. And I know that's not what the drama's about. I get it. I know the synopsis is more highlighting the plight. It's more about how the police, as you say, messed up that case in 2006. I do understand it, but I can't explain how at the same time, I feel that by watching it, it's almost like supporting the notion of making a drama out of honor killing. Does that sound really silly?
No, it doesn't. Actually, it's a very good point, Phil, and I take that point quite seriously. I think it's worth considering it like that, because we don't have to watch this stuff. I think I feel more knowledgeable about the situation having watched it. I think I understand more than I might have done before. So I'm sort of pleased that I watched it, even though it's a difficult thing to take on board.
It's kind of like, it's interesting because somebody close to me refused to watch the Dennis Nielsen thing, saying I absolutely won't, because I won't glorify a monster by watching it as entertainment, because it's just entertainment. The thing that amused me the most about that, Chantal, was what did everyone complain about? Not the gore, not the detail. People were smoking. That's the biggest number of complaints.
No.
We're complaining because the mass murderer dismembered people, get them under his floorboards and in a cupboard. Everyone was smoking. That's shocking.
Yeah, I know. And indeed, it was shocking.
The whole thing was just, the whole thing was just very weird. I haven't got round to seeing Goliath series 2 yet. I'm saving myself.
It's so good. There are 4 series of Goliath. So yeah. It's one for a good long winter weekend. We're sort of getting to that stage whereby we're thinking about sort of just losing half a day lying on the sofa. So for any blokes out there who want something lovely and blokey and just take you away to another place, watch either Bangers and Cash, which I think is a great title on KTV. It's all about doing up cars. It's like it's doing up old bangers. It's just brilliant. And lovely Mike Brewer has been making his show Wheeler Dealers on Discovery, I think, since 2002 or something. There are loads of them out there, but UK TV on yesterday have got Bangers and Cash.
Have you met Mike Brewer? Have you ever met
Mike Brewer? Yes, he lives in California.
Are we allowed to shoehorn in that? I know this is a bit sort of morbid, and I don't want to end on a depressing note, but it kind of got me a bit this week, and I felt it's a bit sad. I don't know whether or not either of you who have ever seen the BBC program. It's a daytime show called Money for Nothing. Have either of you seen it? It's a brilliant concept for the program. It's a roster of different presenters who actually meet people at a recycling center where they stop someone from throwing something out. They then ask if they can have it. They then restore, or they get specialists to restore said items. They then sell it and give the money to that individual who was going to throw it out, completely unaware that that's what they were going to do with it and how they were going to make money out of it.
Really?
Brilliant concept, because it's obviously all about recycling and not trying to encourage landfill. Very, very clever as a program. But one of their presenters this week, EJ Osborne, and he was one of the lineup who presented it. He died at the age of 45. I'm really sorry to end on a morbid note, but it was quite sad and a bit sudden, really. So I just think it'd be quite nice to mention that he is, hopefully the program will live on even without him. But it was quite unexpected and sad, because apparently he'd been battling an illness for a short time and no one knew.
Wow.
There
Sad
we go.
News.
Very
Gosh,
sad. Sorry to end on a morbid note, but still.
Way too young. Way too young. Well, if you want to finish the weekend on a very silly note, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know whether to recommend it or not, because everything else that I recommend I've actually seen. But Spitting Image is back on Sunday night.
Fantastic.
So Spitting Image is on BritBox. BritBox, I've mentioned before, is half ITV and half BBC. You can have a month's free trial if you want to try out BritBox. They've got loads of fabulous things on there. But
And on that note of comedy,
you're one of those fabulous things, but I'm so sorry, we are completely and utterly out of time. But thank you very much indeed to you. Thank you to all of our guests who've been brilliant. Too many to name today. You know who you are. We've loved every single one. And RK, you're all right. Have a good weekend, everybody. And hopefully you'll join us on Monday when we'll be back from midday. But thank you very much indeed. Stay well, stay
bye,
happy.
Chantal. Thank you. Bye-bye, Phil.
Goodbye. Have a good weekend, everybody. And hopefully you'll join us on Monday when we'll be back from midday. But thank you very much indeed. Stay well, stay happy.
Chantal. Thank you. Bye-bye, Phil.
Goodbye.